Chapter 3403. That's right. This was the homeland that belonged to them. Their territory. On what basis should they give it to the external forces? So what if they were from the upper realm? Could the upper realm bully the people from the lower realm? No. They would definitely admit defeat. The cultivators and soldiers from the major forces had their eyes reignited with a burning desire to battle. Smoke rose everywhere as the flames of war raged, and it was about to break out at any moment. Both sides fought, the ground shook, the dark clouds rolled, and there were bursts of thunder explosions. The dark sky added an austere aura to the battlefield. Blood stained the ground red, and the smell of blood rushed to the nostrils. On this side, the disciples of the Nether Palace, the dead corpses, and the various forces from the Nirvana realm had started a war. Yi Qing Luo's figure swiftly dashed towards the Earth Sovereign. At the same time, two huge battle pets appeared out of thin air beside her, one black and one white. The aura was majestic, attracting the surrounding heaven and earth's spiritual chi, rolling up waves of stormy waves. The Earth Sovereign had not expected that there would be someone from the lower realm who dared to take the initiative to challenge him. He squinted his eyes and gave an unfathomable smile. "Young lady, don't be too self-righteous. Think that you can deal with that bunch of trash from the Nether Palace, and you can fight with me." Just as he finished his words, the Earth Sovereign waved his sleeves. An incomparably powerful force swept out along with his sleeves. That chi wave collided with Yi Qing Luo's attack. In the air, the chi wave collided violently. The people who were fighting around were forced to scatter in all directions by this chi wave. A large area of the battlefield had been emptied. The collision of this force made the Earth Sovereign's half-closed eyes suddenly opened. His eyes lit up a little. The profound wave dispersed. In front of him, a black and white huge body crossed in front of the young lady. A snow-white, huge tiger, a black, huge leopard. Its body was surrounded by swirling airflow. The young lady was safe and sound floating behind the two battle pets. Dressed in red, the flames were like fire. That pair of long and narrow eyes were flickering with a flirtatious red light. White tiger, and this mutated beast? The Earth Sovereign couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the two battle pets in front of him. The Earth Sovereign knew that the white tiger of the four sacred beasts had been contracted, but he didn't expect. The person who made the contract was the woman that the Palace of Darkness wanted to capture. There was also the black leopard. Although it looked like a leopard, it had two black horns sticking out of its head. Others couldn't tell. He was the ruler of the Earth realm and had seen many things. How could he not recognize that the two pitch-black objects were dragon horns? It was a leopard with dragon horns on its head. Wasn't that a mutated beast? It was no wonder that he was able to block his attack. The eyes of the earthly sovereign flickered. It seemed that it wasn't unreasonable for the Palace of Gloomy Darkness to create such a calamity in the lower realm, regardless of the consequences, just for a little girl. At the very least, he didn't know anything. At the moment, he was fighting with the little girl. He felt the same way. There were too many surprises on this little girl. What a pity! The earthly sovereign's eyes suddenly turned cold. An even more majestic power swept out. His figure flashed as he closed in on Yi Qing Luo and launched his attack. The speed of the earthly sovereign was extremely fast. After all, after the profound sky realm and above. The difference between the profound ranks was too obvious. Yi Qing Luo had no time to react at all. The earthly sovereign had already appeared in front of her. The punch that came crashing down was powerful and tyrannical, and it was emitting a strong, profound energy. If it wasn't for Chi who bit Yi Qing Luo's robe and quickly pulled her back. If that punch landed on Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3404. But that powerful energy created a remnant might which shocked Yi Qing Luo. Borrowing Chi support, Yi Qing Luo stabilized herself. But her chest was still feeling stuffy. A fishy sweetness surged up her throat. Under Chi-Chi's support, Yi-Ching Luo stabilized herself. There was a trace of blood at the corner of her lips. Yi-Ching Luo raised her hand and wiped off the blood which was caused by the remnant mite. A glint flashed past her pair of narrow eyes. The current Yi-Ching Luo, indeed. In everyone's eyes was the spiritual pillar, the light of hope. She was like a savior. The various powerhouses people saw Yi-Ching Luo retreating and throwing up blood. Their minds turned cold as their attention uncontrollably gathered on Yi-Ching Luo. They were very clear. Now the only one who could give Nirvana Realm a miracle was Yi-Ching Luo. If Yi-Ching Luo fell, Nirvana Realm, then there was no hope. Everyone clearly heard what the earthly sovereign said just now. This great battle was the predestined calamity of Nirvana Realm, and Yi-Ching Luo was the key to this calamity. Everyone's thinking and attitude made the world mercenary groups people angry and annoyed, but there was nothing they could do. Yan Xiaoyi couldn't hold it in as she kept the sickles in her hands, as she stared angrily at those people whose battle power had plummeted because of Yi-Ching Luo's injury. You bunch of self-proclaimed seniors from the various powerhouses! Can't you have some face? Yan Xiaoyi used her profound energy to spread this round of cursing to every corner of the battlefield. The various powerhouses' representatives' faces sunk. They wanted to berate her back, but on seeing Yan Xiaoyi's the World Mercenary Group uniform, all their words were swallowed back. The World Mercenary Group, that was Yi-Ching Luo's mercenary group. No matter how angry they were, they had to give Yi-Ching Luo some face. The general of the East Below continent commanded his soldiers to disperse the corpses and puppets in front of him to one side. He then turned his head and looked towards Yan Xiaoyi to smooth things over. Miss Yan, I know you're worried about Imperial Madam. Now is the crucial moment. We absolutely cannot have any internal strife. Everyone nodded their heads repeatedly and looked at Yan Xiaoyi and those young boys and girls behind her with a "Why are you so insensible?" expression. Yan Xiaoyi was angered to the point of laughing. Nirvana Realm's life and death situation. You bunch of old seniors have placed all your hopes on a 15-year-old little girl. Do you think you guys really care about face? That's right. You guys are too shameless. If Kitty was my big sister, I wouldn't care about your lives. Kitty Li puffed up her cheeks in anger. And Ruopan also stopped her battle as she walked behind Yan Xiaoyi and looked at those unfriendly expressions. This battle, perhaps it might really be Nirvana Realm's destined calamity. But it doesn't represent that this is Madame Ching Luo's calamity. Don't push all the pressure onto Madame Ching Luo. Someone in the crowd was unconvinced. She's so powerful, taming a saint beast, possessing a divine artifact, and dealing with undead puppets. Since she's so powerful, isn't it only natural for her to protect the Nirvana Realm? Yan Xiaoyi was so angry that she gripped the blade of the black scythe tightly. She couldn't wait to rush forward and slash one of them to death. Chapter 3405. Don't think that we don't know what you're thinking about. Yan Xiaoyi gave a cold harumph. If we lose this battle, are you going to push all the responsibility onto Ching Luo? To make Ching Luo become a sinner? Everyone's gaze evaded. How could that be? In fact, they were indeed thinking in this way. The crux of this battle was Yi-Ching Luo. If they lost this battle, that would be Yi-Ching Luo's responsibility. But these words, they naturally didn't dare to say it out. Don't think that everyone is an idiot. You're a bunch of shameless cowards, placing your hopes on a 15-year-old young lady. I don't know where you get your face from, to claim that you're the representatives of the various powerhouses. Yan Xiaoyi was still berating them with righteous indignation. Suddenly, a yell interrupted her. Xiaoyi, that's enough! That voice was as cold as ice, but it was extremely dignified. Long Yunzhan walked slowly to the front of Yan Xiaoyi, blocking the few of them behind him. His azure blue eyes stared fixedly at the representatives of the various factions in front of him. His expression was indifferent as his tone was icy cold. Everyone, I'm sure you're very clear that this battle is no longer a small scuffle in Nirvana Realm, but it involves the invasion of the Upper Realm's external forces. I know that everyone here has a family. Today our battle is not only to survive, but also to prevent our family members from being invaded by the external forces, to not suffer. The reason why you're here, isn't it because you want to chase the external forces out of Nirvana Realm? The reason why you're standing here, isn't it because of your family for your home, for our territory? Obviously, it was just an extremely calm tone, but unfortunately, it was able to easily ignite that unseen flame in the depths of everyone's hearts. As long as they met that pair of azure blue eyes, inexplicably, they wanted to believe his words. This battle is not only Qing Luo's responsibility, not only are the World Mercenary Group's responsibility, not only your various continents and various powerhouses' responsibility. Long Yunjian suddenly raised his book as his long sword pointed towards the sky. His imposing manner was like a rainbow. This is our Nirvana Realm's responsibility. Boom! A muffled thunder exploded in the sky. Long Yunjian's figure charged into the battlefield once again. Fight! Fight for Nirvana Realm! Fight! Fight for our families and homes! Fight! The eyes of everyone in the World Mercenary Group also burned with fighting spirit. At this moment, suddenly, a resounding dragon roar resounded throughout the entire East Wave continent. Following that, a huge creature appeared out of nowhere in the pitch-black sky. The azure dragon scales were overflowing with light and color, dyeing the entire sky. The huge dragon body circled the horizon. One could vaguely see a blazing figure floating within the dragon's body. This scene caused everyone's pupils to involuntarily widen. Shock, astonishment, and disbelief, all kinds of emotions spread. Then, another resounding dragon roar resounded. A huge dragon head emerged from the body of the spiraling dragon. Green dragon head, green dragon horn. The dragon whiskers danced in the strong wind as the dragon circled and swam. In the air, the huge Xian wave cracked piece by piece, and then repaired piece by piece. Dragon. It was a dragon. An enormous azure dragon. Was this also Yi Qing Luo's war pet? Chapter 3406. Each and every one of them stared unblinkingly at the azure dragon hovering in the sky. Their eyes were filled with envy. Their hearts were like dew after a long drought, rising a huge hope. The head of the four sacred beasts, the azure dragon, sacred beast? Earth Sovereign recognized the azure dragon at one glance. His majestic eyes glowed slightly as he stared at the azure dragon. Unimaginable. A girl from the lower realm not only subdued a white tiger sacred beast, but also the azure dragon became her battle pet. One must know, these four sacred beasts were once the battle pets of that person. As that person passed away, the four sacred beasts disappeared without a trace. Now they actually became the battle pet of a girl from the lower realm. What was the identity of this girl? That person from the secluded palace targeted Yi Qing Luo. Was it really just because Yi Qing Luo blocked his way? But Earth Sovereign had no time to continue to be shocked, because the more shocking was yet to come. After Yi Qing Luo summoned the azure dragon, Qi Yan, Qi Qi, and Shi Ju also soared into the sky and stood in front of the azure dragon. Several battle pets released their beast power. The majestic power shocked the four directions. This scene, even until a long time later, it was still passed down as a classic. Little friends, now it's our time. Yi Qing Luo's cold voice revealed a biting cold. The glower flame fan in her hand flipped over her fingertips. Streams of wind blades, like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, shot out. Just when those battle pets let out a beast howl in unison, a big battle was about to break out. they heard a clear voice coming from the crowd. "Me too!" Following that, a figure was seen flying towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. That figure seemed not to be afraid of the azure dragons surrounding, sweeping airwaves. Instead, he fearlessly welcomed the wave of qi. What made everyone surprised was that figure was completely not affected by the pressure released by the azure dragon and directly rushed to the front of Yi Qing Luo. The appearance of this person also made Yi Qing Luo somewhat surprised. When she met that pair of green eyes, Yi Qing Luo was even more shocked. Before she had time to ask, how did he rush forward? Yi Qing Luo felt her heart fiercely tremble, as if something was about to be stripped out from within her profound heart jade. The feeling of being stripped away was extremely painful. Yi Qing Luo's face turned pale as she raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. In the next instant, a green pearl the size of a fist emerged from her chest. The green pearl shone with a cold luster. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. That was the soul pearl that contained the half-soul of the black tortoise. The soul pearl seemed to have its own consciousness as it flew towards the young man before it. As soon as he got close to the teenager, the soul pearl entered the youth's forehead. A jade-green light enveloped the youth's body. After the soul pearl fused with the young man, he slowly opened his eyes. The jade-green resplendent eyes stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo as it said word by word, the sacred beast black tortoise, is willing to sign a life and death contract with Master Xian Gui. If you do this, Yi Qing Luo knitted her brows tightly and wanted to say something. However, the young man raised his hand and held her hand. A drop of blood overflowed from her fingertip and slowly entered the young man's palm. At the same time, an extremely intense jade-green light blossomed from their bodies. The person in front of her was Xian Gui, that Xian Gui who had an extremely good relationship with Miao Yi in the Miao Gu family. Ever since she got the soul pearl, Yi Qing Luo could almost confirm that Xian Gui was the black tortoise. Only, looking at the good relationship between Xian Gui and Yi. Chapter 3407. Who would have thought Xian Gui had actually formed a blood contract with her in such a way? Could it be that he didn't know that after forming a blood contract with her, if she went too far away, as her battle pet, he had to stay by her side? Miao Yi was the holy maiden of the Miao tribe and also the tribe leader. He had to stay in the Miao tribe to manage the affairs of the Miao tribe. It was a contract. But this meant that he and Miao Yi could no longer stick together like before. However, all these, Yi Qing Luo didn't open her mouth to inquire about Black Tortoise's strength. The power surging within her body made her profound jade heart feel as if it was gradually expanding, as if it was about to burst open. Oh! A muffled groan escaped her mouth. This sound was clearly very soft. However, Long Yunjian, who was in the midst of battle, inexplicably heard this groan. His azure blue pupils suddenly contracted. He abruptly looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Then he quickly moved in that direction. Leader, Tong Ziqing had been following beside Long Yunjian, and on seeing him rushing towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, she immediately pulled him back. Where are you going? Long Yunjian's face sunk as he didn't reply. His icy cold eyes stared unblinkingly at Yi Qing Luo's direction. You can't go over there. Tong Ziqing didn't let go. Qing Luo is in pain. Long Yunjian frowned as he struggled free from Tong Ziqing's hand and walked past her. Calm down. Tong Ziqing stood in front of Long Yunjian once again. If something really happens to Qing Luo, the Overlord will not stand by idly. If you rush up now, you will be injured. It was said that people who fell in love were stupid. Tong Ziqing now completely believed this sentence. Yes, Yi Qing Luo indeed looked like she was in pain. It floated in the air, shrouded in green light. Her beautiful face was faintly discernible under the green light. Vaguely, one could see her slightly furrowed brows and the expression of pain on her face. But could Long Yunjan not see that around Yi Qing Luo's surroundings, the spiraling green dragon, the erect white tiger, and that flying vermilion bird, as well as the Shiju, which was standing right in front, defending the surroundings? If he rashly rushed over, he probably wasn't even close to Yi Qing Luo. They would have been devoured by the beastly aura released by the battle pets. Didn't they see that the earthly sovereign over there didn't dare to act rashly? He liked Yi Qing Luo that much. Did he love her so much that he didn't even care about his own life? Tong Ziqing suppressed the pain in her heart as her hands tugged onto Long Yunjan's sleeves as her voice carried a tinge of begging. Qing Luo is really fine. Look at the Overlord. He's still standing there looking at Qing Luo. That means that Qing Luo is really fine. I just don't wish for you to get hurt. The woman, who had always been cold, was now speaking to him in a pleading tone. Long Yunjan didn't know why, but he felt a part of his heart violently contract. His tightly clenched fists gradually loosened. His vision slowly shifted from Yi Qing Luo's direction to Dmo Xian, and finally onto Tong Ziqing's face. The woman's delicate face looked a little embarrassed. His eyes were slightly red. There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. However, just as he was about to investigate further, the woman's eyes quickly returned to their usual coldness. Long Yunjan's heart inexplicably twitched again. He subconsciously held the woman's hand. I got it. Chapter 3408. However, it was wide enough to wrap around her hand. Tong Ziqing was stunned, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. She moved her gaze stiffly. In the end, it stopped at the hand that Long Yunjan had taken the initiative to hold her hand. She was so happy that she was about to burst into tears. This was the first time that Long Yunjan had taken the initiative to hold her hand. It was different from the past. It was either dangerous or instructive. Instead, he was really holding her hand. Moreover, he had really dispelled the idea of going over to Yi Qing Luo's side. Does this mean she was in his heart? Actually, he already had a little bit of status. Tong Ziqing's eyelashes trembled slightly. She lowered her eyes. Her thick and long eyelashes cast a faint shadow on her face. She didn't allow Long Yunjan to go over to Yi Qing Luo's side. Not because he was jealous of Yi Qing Luo, or perhaps he wasn't willing to see Long Yunjan putting in so much effort for Yi Qing Luo. It was the onlookers who saw things clearly. Compared to Long Yunjan, she was just calmer, because they knew that in this world, the person who cared about Yi Qing Luo the most wasn't there the world group, but the Overlord. If Yi Qing Luo was really in pain and something really happened to her, the Overlord wouldn't just stand there, staring at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Therefore, she couldn't let Long Yunjan take the risk. Most importantly, the Overlord's jealousy did not make any sense at all. If Dizun knew about this, Long Yunjan's feelings towards Yi Qing Luo, I'm afraid, His Majesty's jealousy will cause a great commotion again. In the meantime, Dmo Xian, who was originally standing on the original spot without moving, suddenly flashed and speedily skimmed to Yi Qing Luo's side. This scene caused Long Yunjan, who had just given up on the idea, to narrow his eyes and look in that direction. Qing Luo. Long Yunjan spat out 2 words hoarsely. A trace of worry surfaced in Tong Ziqing's eyes. This time, she did not stop him. Instead, she let go of Long Yunjan's hand. She was certain that Yi Qing Luo was fine. It was all because of the Dizun's attitude. But Long Yunjan didn't act like what she expected, immediately charging towards Yi Qing Luo. Instead, he raised his sword and pierced through the disciple of the Palace of Darkness who was sneaking up on Tong Ziqing. Then he pulled Tong Ziqing into his embrace and kicked away all the enemies surrounding him. Tong Ziqing's face crashed into his chest. He could smell a fresh, ocean-like scent. She was a little dazed. What are you waiting for? Let's get rid of these trash from the Palace of Darkness first. Long Yunjan's voice came from above. Tong Ziqing blinked her eyes in confusion. When she came back to her senses, only then did she realize that Long Yunjan had already brought her to a safer place. The man released her waist and touched her forehead with his ice-cold palm. "What's wrong? Are you hurt somewhere?" Tong Ziqing hurriedly took a step back. I'm fine." She didn't know why her heart was thumping madly. She almost couldn't suppress the wild beating of her heart. She went past Long Yunjan and looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction as she spoke in a low voice. "You! Aren't you going over?" Qing Luo Shi. "The Di Zun is there. Even if I go over, it's of no use." Long Yunjan replied calmly as he turned his azure blue eyes and looked at her. "But you, if you're not feeling well, then take a rest first. Don't force yourself. If something happens, everyone will be worried." Saying that, Long Yunjan turned around and prepared to return to the battlefield. Chapter 3409. Tong Ziqing was shocked by Long Yunjan's earlier words. Seeing that he was about to leave, she instinctively tugged on his robe. Group leader. "I'm fine, I want to fight together with you." The moment Long Yunjan turned back, coincidentally, from Yi Qing Luo's side, the emerald light was shooting in all directions. Tong Ziqing tugged on his robe as she raised her head. Against that emerald light, Long Yunjan could almost see the lady's exquisite face, that creamy white skin and those thick and long eyelashes. Inexplicably, looking at the lady, tugging on his robe, it was so cute that it made him a little dazed. On the other side, when Dmo Xian rushed towards Yi Qing Luo, he was blocked by the surrounding beast aura and the majestic, profound energy fluctuations. His brows creased slightly as his peach blossom eyes swirled with light. His imposing manner shook as a strong, imposing manner spread out from his body. His purple robe fluttered along with the strong wind. The next moment, he had already broken through the surrounding fluctuations and got close to Yi Qing Luo. At this moment, the young lady who was wrapped in the emerald light had a pair of scarlet-red eyes, which had already been shrouded by the emerald light. Dmo Xian's brows knitted even tighter. A thick aura kept revolving around Yi Qing Luo's body. The imposing manner was extremely ferocious. This was the sign of advancement. If Yi Qing Luo was able to advance successfully this time, then she would directly break through to the Sage Profound realm. Sage Profound, that was the legendary realm. Yi Qing Luo could be said to be the first cultivator in the Nirvana realm to break through to the Sage Profound realm. But when he saw that flowing airflow, Dmo Xian's expression became increasingly grave. He stared intently at Yi Qing Luo, looking at the young lady's devastatingly beautiful face, which had already surfaced a thick layer of emerald light. He no longer hesitated. His long arms stretched out, directly passing through the surging majestic airflow around Yi Qing Luo, directly hugging her waist. In a split second, a terrifying force like a sharp blade cut Dmo Xian's forelimbs. That twisting and twisting pain made Dmo Xian's complexion turn pale by a few shades. What is the Overlord doing? Looks like Madame D is about to advance. Why does the Overlord want to stop Madame D from ascending? What's going on? Countless onlookers were shocked by the majestic energy ripples in the sky. They involuntarily focused their gazes on the two figures in midair. Logically speaking, but now Madame D was able to ascend. If he were to fight with the earthly sovereign, he would have more confidence. Why did the Overlord stop Madame D from advancing? He was right. Dmo Xian's action was to stop Yi Qing Luo. The man's purple robe fluttered in the air. The powerful dark force danced wildly. It kept colliding with the jade light on Yi Qing Luo's body, squeezing and colliding with each other. No matter how that jade light formed into a sharp blade, it twined around Dmo Xian's body. Dmo Xian had not let go of Yi Qing Luo's waist. While the two forces were suppressing each other, Dmo Xian suddenly raised his other hand. Purple light swirled in his palm, pressing down on Yi Qing Luo's chest. Swish! Encircling her body, that surging majestic energy violently pushed against DMO, Xian's palm, which was pressing down. His purple robe fluttered, his jet black hair flew. The two forces intertwined and collided, the momentum rising steadily. The entire East continent started to shake violently, tremble. Sand and hurricane surged violently. Chapter 34:10. The tearing pain in her body and a kind of extremely oppressive energy kept squeezing her heart, making Yi Qing Luo's slender brows crease tightly into a bundle. Her delicate body struggled slightly. Her enchanting eyes, which were covered in red light and green light, blinked absent-mindedly. Lil Luo, can you hear me? She could vaguely hear the man's deep and mellow voice in her ears. Her frown deepened. His consciousness was sometimes clear and sometimes blurry. She felt that her body was like a balloon that was being inflated, constantly expanding. It was as if it would explode in the next instant. The pain of swelling pain. Her consciousness became increasingly blurry. In particular, there was a force in her chest that was constantly approaching her. It was just like someone wanted to break her body. She resisted. He could not help but struggle. However, that power was pressing on him even tighter. Her eyes were half opened, and a face that made her feel at ease appeared in front of her. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes were as deep as the sea as he looked at her worriedly. She held her breath, and her eyelashes were moist because of the pain. She suddenly trembled and said, Xian, when he spat out these two words. Yi Qing Luo had already exhausted all her energy. Little Luo, the voices in his ears became clearer. The scent of sandalwood entered her nostrils, clearing her mind a little. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath and suppressed the tearing pain all over her body as she tried her best to open her eyes wide. When she saw that familiar face of DMO Xian, her eyes reddened and the gentleness that a young girl should have appeared in front of him. Xian, as long as you can hear me. DMO Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Qing Luo suddenly felt a dull pain in her chest as she groaned. Lowering her eyes, she saw the man's palm hovering over her heart. Powerful, profound energy gathered in his palm, whereas the airwaves that lingered around her body were resisting DMO Xian's approach. Teach this is Yi Qing Luo naturally knew clearly what the tearing pain in her body and the dense heaven and earth spiritual qi around her represented. It was like a whirlpool, lingering around continuously. It was a sign of advancement, an opportunity to break through. Right now, she was at the 9th rank of the Sky Profound Realm. He wanted to break through to the Sage Mystic Realm, the Legend Realm. This opportunity was hard to come by in 1,000 years. Now, after forming a blood contract with the Black Tortoise, she seized this opportunity to break through. But DMO Xian's actions, he was obviously trying to stop her from breaking through. DMO Xian wanted her to give up this rare opportunity to break through. However, if he gave up this time, next time, it would be very difficult. He seemed to have noticed the confusion on the girl's face. The man did not explain. He only used his obsidian eyes, resplendent and deep, to stare deeply at her. His tone was extremely serious. Lil Luo, do you trust me? I do, he answered without hesitation. How could he not believe it? In this world, the person she trusted the most was DMO Xian. DMO Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as his jet black hair fluttered wildly on his shoulders, further accentuating that peerless countenance of his, adding a tinge of treacherous evilness. Trust me and leave it to me. His voice was cold and calm. He was so firm that it was impossible for anyone not to believe in him. Yi Qing Luo's thoughts moved as her charming eyes were slowly filled with warmth. She forcefully pulled the corners of her lips as she revealed a faint smile. All right. Her words had just ended. She slowly exhaled a breath. Chapter 34:11. Dmo Xian gazed deeply at the young lady's alluring face. His eyes were filled with pampering and tenderness. Then his pupils congealed, solemn and firm. Whoosh! His entire body shook. The profound energy in his palm grew stronger and stronger. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows were tightly knitted together in pain. Her breathing also became heavier. But this time, she had no intention to resist. In her mind, the man's low whisper echoed in her ear. "Do you believe me? Believe. Believe him. Leave everything to him." Body and mind gradually relaxed. The gush of airflow which was lingering around Yi Qing Luo gradually subsided because she had no intention to resist. Dmo Xian's palm covered Yi Qing Luo's chest. Hu, hu, hu. Just at this moment, from Dmo Xian's palm, on Yi Qing Luo's chest, endless hurricane and the profound energy waves rolled violently, wantonly intertwined. The vast, profound energy was like a huge tsunami billowing. Ugh! Yi Qing Luo felt the pain in her body. She groaned in pain, as if there was some power twisting her heart, entering her profound jade heart. "It's all right. It's all right." Just at this moment, a gentle male voice rang beside her ear. A warm kiss slowly fell on her lips. Perhaps this wisp of warmth was like a spring that flowed through the limbs and bones of his body. The intense pain and swelling sensation in his body gradually dissipated along with the warmth. Her consciousness gradually recovered. Her long eyelashes fluttered a few times and slowly opened her eyes. Coincidentally, she met the man's deep peach blossom eyes. "Ah, Xian." She opened her mouth. Her voice was still a little hoarse. Dmo Xian rubbed her hair. "It's all right." Indeed, it was all right. All the discomfort in her body was gone. Even the feeling that he was on the verge of breaking through to the next level was gone. But she didn't open her mouth to ask. She was clear, no matter what the reason was. Dmo Xian would do this. There must be a reason for it. Dmo Xian lowered his eyes, looking at the obedient young lady nestled in his arms. There was a complicated look in his eyes. However, her heart was filled with sweetness and happiness. His little Luo heir really trusted him. He couldn't help but hug the girl in his arms tightly. However, this sweet atmosphere could not last for long on this battlefield. When Earth's sovereign saw Dmo Xian appearing, his expression turned extremely ugly. In his eyes, a haze that was hard to be noticed appeared. That high and mighty look, totally not putting Yi Qing Luo in his eyes, had suddenly collapsed at this instant. Ever since Yi Qing Luo started summoning her war pet, everything was going in the exact opposite direction that he had envisioned. White tiger, vermilion bird, azure dragon. Now Black Tortoise had taken the initiative to appear, taking the initiative to set up a life and death blood pact with Yi Qing Luo. A girl from the lower realm had formed a contract with one of the 4 great saint beasts. This was simply too fantastical, okay? Even if this Yi Qing Luo was someone from the lower realm. But none of her battle pets were to be messed with. If he wasn't careful, he would become food for the battle pets. What surprised him even more was Dizun. He didn't just appear in the lower realm, and that intimate attitude between him and Yi Qing Luo. Anyone would be able to tell what the current situation was. At this moment, the earthly sovereign finally understood why the Palace of Darkness would choose him to help the Palace of Darkness. When Earth Sovereign's vision passed by Dmo Xian, the haze and fleeting hatred in his eyes gradually became obvious. Chapter 34:12. Overlord. A sneer, full of ridicule, came out from the mouth of the Earth Sovereign. His voice was sharp and harsh. The two who were still hugging each other frowned and looked over. Yi Qing Luo clearly saw the ruthlessness and hatred in the eyes of the Earth Sovereign. Hatred? Yi Qing Luo was stunned and looked sideways at Dmo Xian, asking in a low voice, Xian, there is a grudge between you and the Earth Sovereign. Dmo Xian just glanced at the Earth Sovereign lightly. I don't remember. Yi Qing Luo. He was after all the Earth Realm Sovereign. Why did his tone sound like? The Earth Sovereign was an insignificant Tom, Dick, or Harry. But it was not clear what was Dmo Xian's identity in the Upper Realm. But from the attitude of Bai Su and the Huangfu family in the Heaven Realm, Dmo Xian must be rich and powerful in the Upper Realm. He was also respected by everyone. Even if he was the Emperor of the Earth Realm, there should be very little interaction between them. Then, why did the Earth Sovereign look at Dmo Xian with hatred? I didn't expect that. Overlord is actually living in the lower realm after so many years. The Earth Sovereign squinted his eyes with a superior attitude. The place where Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian were standing at. It was the place where the Dark Abyss Palace disciples were surrounded by the corpse puppets. The distance between them and the Earth Sovereign was only about 20 to 30 meters. Behind the Earth Sovereign were the 5 new dead corpse puppets. Even though there were 5 terrifying battle pets floating in the sky above them, Su Lingyue and Su Lingyue didn't know what to do. But the Earth Sovereign expressed that he could try to see whether the Dark Palace had more people or the speed of the battle pets was faster. Listening to the Earth Sovereign's words, Yi Qing Luo's slender brows knitted tighter. Sure enough, there was some interaction between the Earth Sovereign and Dmo Xian. The Overlord came to the lower realm because you like a girl from the lower realm, or because you want to break the Celestial Master's divination. The Earth Sovereign didn't care whether Dmo Xian responded to him or not. He continued to say, this tribulation in the Nirvana realm is destined. Even the Overlord can't break it. His tone was slightly gloomy. A cold, murderous intent surfaced in the depths of his eyes. If Dizun insists on defying heaven and changing fate, I can only offend you. At the end of the day, Earthly Sovereign was just looking for a suitable excuse to strike at Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked at the man who had a calm expression, as though he didn't put the Earth Sovereign in his eyes at all. He guessed right again. Dmo Xian's status in the Upper Realm. Indeed, he was even more honorable than the Earthly Sovereign. This was the first time she had seen someone provoking Dmo Xian in such a manner after knowing his identity. He seemed to have seen the look in the girl's eyes that she was watching a good show. Dmo Xian's eyes flashed with a doting tenderness. His large palm gently caressed the girl's head. When he raised his head to look at the Emperor of Earth, his face was covered with a layer of frost. His peerless face was as cold as ice. It exuded a strange and horrifying aura. When his shimmering peach blossom eyes swept over the Emperor of Earth, a bone-chilling, killing intent assaulted his face. The Earth Sovereign's heart trembled. Under that intense gaze, he was totally unable to restrain himself and took 2 steps back. This step back made his face suddenly turn livid. Chapter 30:413. Just as the sinister voice fell, countless cultivators dressed in black and white suddenly rushed out from all directions. Those profound practitioners had majestic auras, and they emitted piercingly cold auras. The moment they appeared, all directions were shrouded under their imposing manner. When the members of the various powers in the Nirvana realm saw the appearance of this group of profounders, they were intimidated by the pressure that was being emitted from their bodies to the point that even breathing became slightly difficult. No matter how much they couldn't understand the current situation, they couldn't. They were very clear. This group of people were not from the Palace of Darkness, not those corpse puppets, not the disciples of the Palace of Darkness, but the army of the Earthly Sovereign from the Earth Realm, the royal army of the Earth Realm. When the superpowers realized this, their faces turned as pale as a sheet. No one had expected this. This war between the Palace of Darkness and the Nirvana realm would cause the Earthly Sovereign to come personally, would cause the royal army of the Earth realm to be mobilized. This batch of royal army of the Earth realm had about 200 people. Compared to the forces of the 4 continents of the Nirvana realm, 200 people was not considered a lot. But the number was not important. The important thing was these 200 cultivators were the royal army of the Earth realm. The Earth realm, the place that the Nirvana realm called the Upper Realm, the place that they yearned for. Each and every one of them was at least above the sky profound realm. The existence of 1 against 100. Just these 200 from the royal army of the Earth realm. It was enough to give them a hard time. Not to mention, there were tens of thousands of corpse puppets and the densely packed disciples of the Palace of Darkness. After seeing this scene, even with the help of the Overlord. Furthermore, there were also the 4 sacred beasts that shocked everyone present. The people of the major forces were scared out of their wits. Looking at those ants from the lower realm who were in such a panic, the earthly sovereign's heart was greatly satisfied. To him, this group of people from the lower realm were just a bunch of trash, a bunch of ants. Destroying the Nirvana realm was just to give these resources to the more powerful people to enjoy. Especially DMO Xian wanted to protect the Nirvana realm for a girl from the lower realm. Therefore, he had to cooperate with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness to destroy the Nirvana realm. Let DMO Xian have a taste of how painful it was to lose something important. Earth Sovereign's sinister eyes suddenly shot towards Yi Qing Luo. He smiled coldly and rushed forward. Kill! 1 word fell. The royal army of the Earth realm attacked from all directions. Powerful, profound energy covered the skies of the entire East Wave continent. The royal army moved. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness was even more confident, originally because of DMO Xian's attack, because of Yi Qing Luo and the 4 sacred beasts' oppressive might. Their morale was instantly ignited. As expected of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, even the Emperor of the Land Domain could help the Netherworld Palace. Moreover, there were so many experts of the Sky Profound realm fighting alongside them. It was the right choice for them to join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. The morale of Abysmal Palace burned higher and higher. The major forces of the Nirvana realm were losing their fighting spirit. This scene made Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk slightly. Something tightened around his waist. The man hugged her as he flew away from the earthly sovereign's attack. Yi Qing Luo patted the man's hand lightly as she gave him a light smile. DMO Xian only took a look at her as he raised his palm and rubbed her head. There was no interaction between the two of them, but just one look was enough to understand the other party's meaning. Chapter 34:14. DMO Xian loosened his arms and looked at her with a gentle gaze. Be careful, I will always be here. The man's low and magnetic voice floated into her ears like a feather, stirring her heartstrings. No matter how dangerous this battlefield was, it was impossible for them to survive. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo also blushed under the man's loving gaze and his hoarse voice. This man really would never let go of any chance to flirt with her. Yi Qing Luo raised her blushing face and gave him a fierce stare. Then she left his arms. With a leap, she leaped into the air and landed on Chi-Chi's back. If she continued to be flirted with by DMO Xian, this solemn battlefield was about to become frivolous. Nirvana Realm's morale and fighting spirit had been completely obliterated by the 200 over royal army. She had to be a good example. After all, in the eyes of Nirvana Realm's people, she had become the Messiah. Even if she was unwilling to be this Messiah, for the sake of Nirvana Realm, she had to bear the responsibility of this title. The Earth Realm's royal army were all Sky Profound cultivators and above. Sky Profound, Earth Profound, Profound Profound, Yellow Profound, which were commonly used in Nirvana Realm, although there was only a difference of 1 word. However, the difference in strength between the two of them was worlds apart. One must know that in the entire Nirvana Realm, excluding those experts who had concealed their profound rank, there were no more than 20 sky profound realm sovereigns that were known to the public. But now, there are more than 20 profound sky supremes from the Earth realm who were aggressively charging over. And they were the kind of well-trained experts in the army. The strength of both sides could be said to be worlds apart. But so what if it was worlds apart? Since the people from the upper realm and that balanced historian did not intend to intervene in this disaster of Nirvana realm, then on her side she could totally disregard the balance of Nirvana realm. Since Nirvana realm was destined to be a disaster, then she would turn this calamity into a chance for the Nirvana realm to be reborn. Didn't her Ashin say so? He would always be here, as long as he was here. She could go all out without any scruples. The opponent was strong enough to make her blood boil. It had been a long, long time since he had felt this way. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into an evil cold arc. His eyes were burning with the desire to fight. Riding on Chi-Chi, Lin Sanjiu circled the skies above the battlefield. The devouring flame fan in Zhang Xian's hand danced excitedly like a fire elf. The profound energy of the 9th grade of the sky profound realm instantly enveloped the entire battlefield. It also forcefully suppressed the oppressive might released by the royal army. He flipped the glowing flame fan in his hand. Raging flames and wind blades shot out wantonly like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. Brothers, we must win this battle. If we fight, we might die and the Nirvana realm might be destroyed, but if we don't fight, we will definitely die. The Nirvana realm will also be destroyed. Our relatives in the other continents will also be tortured to death because we surrendered without a fight. If we fight, we might still have a slim chance of survival. We might still have a possibility. Brothers, let's fight to the death. He had to bring out his strongest strength and display his ultimate strength. Defend the territory that belongs to us. Yi Qing Luo's clear voice, along with the profound qi, spread wave after wave. Her voice was impassioned and shocking. Chapter 34:15. Yi Qing Luo's target was the Earth Sovereign. Her gorgeous face was calm. Her fingertips moved and the glower flame fan was closed. The red profound light turned into an illusory giant dragon. Under the pressure of the 4 sacred beasts, it flew away at lightning speed. The Earth Sovereign looked at Yi Qing Luo, who was about to fight with him with the sacred beasts. He couldn't help but sneer. Little girl, if you had broken through successfully, perhaps I could have more fun. But unfortunately, the Overlord doesn't seem to be willing to let you advance, along with his scornful voice. The profound qi around his body flew around recklessly. It also caused his robe to flutter in the wind. The majestic qi seemed to be mocking Yi Qing Luo's overconfidence. Little girl, in my opinion, the Overlord is deliberately using me to kill you. The Earth Sovereign stretched out his arm slowly, and a long sword appeared in his hand. That long sword was extremely imposing. It was as if he could gather all the air around him. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips rose, with a casual, sarcastic smile in her eyes. Earth Sovereign, are you trying to sow discord between me and Xian? Since you are so confident in yourself, do you still need to use such despicable means? The Earth Sovereign's face sank, holding the long sword high. With him as the center, the hurricane rolled like billowing waves. All the imposing manner was condensed on the long sword. He waved the sword. The terrifying, profound light rolled up the sword waves. The surrounding air also began to distort violently. This strike was full of vigor and vigor. Yi Qing Luo's eyes changed slightly. Immediately her fingertips swept. The glower flame fan opened and the profound qi condensed. The vast profound qi burst out. She moved and jumped up from Chi-Chi's back, immediately bringing up a hurricane. She met the sword waves of the Earth Sovereign. At the same time in the hurricane, Yi Qing Luo quickly changed the glower flame fan, refracted numerous wind blades, like a fairy scattering flowers, crossed the sword waves, and went straight to the Earth Sovereign. Seeing the Earth Sovereign's figure was covered by the red wind blades. However, he heard a voice full of mockery. Insignificant tricks! As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Shiwen's eyes widened. The Earth Sovereign moved his palms. The sword waves and the palm wind accompanied each other. He leaped up and floated in the air. The long sword stroke was swift and fierce, totally not giving Yi Qing Luo any leeway to parry. Little girl, don't worry. I won't let you die so easily. Aren't you the woman that Dizun cares about the most? If this emperor captured you alive and tortured you bit by bit in front of him, making you wish you were dead, would he feel pain? The earthly sovereign's slightly crazy voice was sharp and harsh. He gave a sinister smile as the gaze he shot towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with a haze. Definitely, he would definitely suffer. This emperor wants him to taste this kind of pain. As the rage of the earthly sovereign increased, his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Yi Qing Luo knew very well. The gap between him and the earthly sovereign was huge. If it wasn't for the 4 sacred beasts and Shi Ju by his side, she was afraid that she would not be able to withstand a single strike from the earthly sovereign. The explosion of air waves caused her heart to feel somewhat oppressed. Little Luo, Dmo Xian had been paying close attention to Yi Qing Luo's actions. The moment he saw Yi Qing Luo's face turn pale, his heart suddenly trembled as his figure turned into an afterimage, speedily charging towards Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 34:16. If it was against those disciples of the secluded palace or the undead puppets, to Yi Qing Luo it was just a small matter like cutting cabbage. But Earth Sovereign was after all the controller of the upper realm. His strength was not something that Yi Qing Luo could contend against. Dmo Xian had planned to settle the Earth Sovereign himself from the beginning, but he still let go and let Yi Qing Luo fight with the Earth Sovereign. This battle was not to let Yi Qing Luo fight against the strong ones, so that she could improve her actual combat experience, but it was for Nirvana Realm to build momentum for the cultivators of Nirvana Realm. The appearance of the Earth Sovereign and the appearance of the royal army had made the cultivators of Nirvana Realm lose all their fighting spirit. As the savior in everyone's mind, Yi Qing Luo must use her own actions to give everyone fighting spirit and hope. So, Yi Qing Luo must fight with the Earth Sovereign. Only Yi Qing Luo could fight on par with the Earth Sovereign. Only then could the profound practitioners of the various forces in the Nirvana Realm see hope. Even if he let go and let Yi Qing Luo build momentum. But Dmo Xian was still paying attention to Yi Qing Luo's condition. Seeing Yi Qing Luo was shrouded by the violent, profound energy released by the Earth Sovereign, Dmo Xian's speed was faster. Just as he was about to get close to Yi Qing Luo and help her to block the strong air wave, suddenly a cold wind brushed past. A figure stood in between him and Yi Qing Luo. A cold and gloomy voice rang in his ear. "Overlord, your opponent is me." Dmo Xian's pupils shrank. His sleeves fluttered, and the explosive airwave flew away like a surging wave. He stretched his body and got close to Yi Qing Luo again. But the person seemed to be waiting for him, here, deliberately, to stop him from helping Yi Qing Luo. "Overlord," I said, "your opponent is me." The gloomy voice sounded extremely strange, along with the voice of the person. The cold, profound qi was also surging violently. Dmo Xian was not unfamiliar with this aura. Not long ago they had just fought. Ghost King. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes. His gaze was sharp. The person, wasn't he the one he met in the illusory land? Ghost King. Unexpectedly, he had not left Nirvana Realm. At this moment, in front of them, which was also the place where Yi Qing Luo and Earth Sovereign were fighting, suddenly a burst of violent, profound light burst out in all directions. Profound qi shrouded the entire area. The young girl's fiery figure was also enveloped by it. It was as if he had been swallowed by a huge bloody mouth. Lil Luo Dmo Xian's shimmering peach blossom eyes seemed to be plated with a layer of thousand-year-old frost. At the same time, the dark force around him shook. Violent air waves spread throughout the entire space. The hurricane roared fiercely. Standing in front of Dmo Xian, Ghost King's black robe was fluttering in the strong wind. His facial features were distorted by the force, and his face was filled with pain. The Ghost King gritted his teeth, and a thick Xian qi swept out from his body to resist. But this resistance, in front of Dmo Xian, was simply too weak. Dmo Xian merely glanced at him coldly. The Ghost King's body seemed to be sent flying by an invisible force. His eyes were cold as he dashed towards the dark radiance in front of him. Overlord, your opponent is me. The Ghost King, who was flipped over, wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, coughed lightly, and rushed forward again. Chapter 34:17. Xian. Suddenly, a young lady's slightly panting voice was heard in the midst of that profound glow. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly. The frost at the bottom of his eyes also slowly melted bit by bit. Lil Luo He spoke in a hoarse voice filled with urgency. I'm fine, don't worry about me. In order to reassure Dmo Xian, Yi Qing Luo's voice was filled with lightness. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's voice, Dmo Xian's tensed heart finally relaxed a little. His vision shifted. His eyes were once again covered with a thin layer of frost, and it was filled with a horrifying, murderous intent. His gaze was fixed on the Ghost King. TSK. Overlord is angry? Ghost King's lips twitched coldly as he wasn't afraid at all. Dmo Xian looked at him. Dmo Xian sneered as his thin lips twitched. His sleeves vibrated and the remaining might spread. Ghost King thought that Dmo Xian was infuriated and wanted to make a move on him. He immediately put on a defensive posture as he looked at Dmo Xian's actions vigilantly. Overlord, why don't we make a bet? Let's see. Will I die in your hands first, or your little lover die in the hands of the earthly emperor first? His voice fell. A swift and sharp blade slashed down from the sky. The speed was so fast that he had no time to evade. Pah! That sharp blade landed heavily on his face. A line of blood appeared from his forehead to his chin. It was still bubbling with blood. But Ghost King laughed instead of getting angry. Ha ha ha! Looks like Overlord really cares about your little lover. His laughter stopped abruptly as an icy cold intent filled his eyes. Too bad. She will die in front of me. Dmo Xian's expression was icy cold as his vision suddenly fixed on a spot behind Ghost King. His cold and thin lips slightly pursed. You want to be this Lord's opponent? You're not qualified. His words had just ended. His figure suddenly blended into the air. Indistinctly, he could only see a purple afterimage flashing past. Ghost King's expression changed as he speedily dashed towards the direction of the afterimage. But before he could make any move, a few powerful forces trapped him within. Then, two old men in white robes leaped out from the crowd. When the Ghost King saw the two of them, he felt a chill run down his spine. His pupils suddenly dilated, especially when he saw one of them. The hatred in his eyes burned wantonly. Ghost Bandit, I finally found you. Ghost King, the person you're looking for is me. The old man looked at him with an indifferent expression. This battle, you can withdraw from it now. The Ghost King suddenly laughed maniacally. Ghost thief, who do you think you are? Why should I give up my decision just because you appeared? Things are different now. You can no longer order me around. Holy pirate, the old man on the side, who was Gui Wu, said, bring him back and slowly reminisce about the past. Don't distract the children. The one who was called Ghost Thief was Holy Thief, who lived in the World Mercenary Group. Hearing Gui Wu's words, The Ghost King suddenly thought of something. Rapidly turning his head, he looked towards the direction that was still enveloped by the profound light that filled the sky. When he saw Dmo Xian heading towards that profound ray, his eyes turned cold as he moved his feet and was about to step forward to stop him. But how would Gui Wu and Holy Pirate give him the chance to continue causing trouble? One on the left and one on the right, they quickly entangled Ghost King. At the same time, Dmo Xian's entire body vibrated with profound energy as it dispersed the dazzling profound ray. The profound ray gradually dispersed. Chapter 34:18. But among the profound rays, where was Yi Qing Luo's figure? Not only Yi Qing Luo, even earthly sovereign's figure was nowhere to be seen. Lil Luo Dmo Xian's heart suddenly constricted. An ominous premonition started to spread from the bottom of his heart. He anxiously searched the surroundings as he extended his senses to the maximum. But within the radius of 100 miles, he totally couldn't sense any trace of Yi Qing Luo's presence. Yi Qing Luo's disappearance was noticed by Gui Wu and God Thief. They exchanged glances and looked at Dmo Xian, who was standing in midair with a gloomy aura, as though he was condensed with an austere aura. Why did Yi Qing Luo suddenly disappear? How could she possibly disappear under their eyelids? What on earth was going on? Earlier, wasn't he still able to hear Yi Qing Luo's voice? Or could it be? Gui Wu and God Thief's expressions congealed as their gazes fell onto Ghost King at the same time. God Thief's face no longer had the usual frivolous look as he stared at Ghost King solemnly. "It's you? The reason why you appeared is because to let secluded palaces, people bring that lass away." It wasn't a question, but a definite sentence. Ghost King had suffered quite a number of external and internal injuries under the duo's joint attack. Hearing God Thief's words, he propped up his swaying body as he laughed maniacally. Ha! Ha ha ha! Right, it's me. Yes, I intentionally obstructed the Overlord, intentionally giving earthly sovereign enough time to bring the young lady away. I'm Secluded Palace's collaborator. Isn't it normal for me to help Secluded Palace? Ha! Ha ha ha! God Thief's expression turned steely green as he hurriedly went forward and grabbed Ghost King's collar. "It's really you? Tell me, where did earthly sovereign bring that lass to?" "Want to know, but I'm not going to tell you." Ghost King looked at God Thief's steely green face as he laughed even more wantonly. "Ha ha ha, I've never expected." The dignified Lord Ghost Thief is actually so worried for a young lady. How ironic. Ghost King. God Thief gritted his teeth as he tugged his collar and shook it hard. "Do you know how important that lass is to the Overlord? If you don't tell me where the girl is, the Overlord will." Speaking of this, God Thief took a careful look at Dmo Xian, who was surrounded by a layer of black gas. He gritted his teeth. "When that time comes, I won't be able to save you either." "You saved me?" The Ghost King couldn't help but laugh out loud. Even tears came out of his eyes. "You saved me? This is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life. Ha ha ha. You save me? You will save me? Ha! How ironic, how ironic." Ghost King. God Thief was so infuriated by Ghost King's crazed look that he didn't know how to persuade him to reveal Qing Luo's whereabouts. Raising his hand, Gui Wu placed it on his shoulder and shook his head. "Forget it, he won't say anything." But, venerable Emperor, Holy Pirate clenched his fists. His muscles tightened. "If the Overlord is still rational on account of your relationship with Yi Qing Luo, he might spare his life." Gui Wu lightly analyzed. God Thief looked in Dmo Xian's direction. "The Overlord doesn't look like he's rational." Yi Qing Luo disappeared right under his eyelids. How could Dmo Xian possibly retain his rationality? Chapter 34:19. His arrogant, provocative voice stopped abruptly. What replaced it was a painful moan. God Thief had yet to react in time. The collar in his hand was left with a piece of cloth. As for Ghost King, not knowing when, Diamo Xian had already locked onto his neck and raised him up high. The man's peerless face was as cold as ice, without a single trace of emotion. A pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, as deep as an abyss, gloomy and gloomy. In his pupils, a purple glow flashed past from time to time, which made his imposing manner even more chilly, especially the man's surroundings, which was encircled with a gloomy black aura. His entire being was like a death god from hell, Azura appearing in this world. Overlord. When he saw that man, God Thief's face suddenly turned pale. He called out to Diamo Xian carefully. However, Diamo Xian didn't even spare him a glance. Diamo Xian only locked onto Ghost King's neck as his icy cold gaze stared at Ghost King. If you want to die, I shall grant you your wish. Ghost King's face flushed red as his four limbs kept on struggling. His pair of eyes stared at Diamo Xian in terror. Overlord, Overlord. God Thief saw that and hurriedly went up, trying to hold onto Diamo Xian's arm. But before he could get near, Diamo Xian's murderous aura was emitting from his body and he was sent flying. God Thief. Ghost Marshal went up and held onto God Thief. He took a look at Diamo Xian and held onto God Thief's shoulder. If Ghost King doesn't tell a student Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts, I'm afraid Overlord will really kill him. God Thief's pupils constricted. Overlord, please, please show mercy. He didn't do it on purpose. Diamo Xian seemed as though he couldn't hear his voice. His icy cold gaze stared intently at Ghost King as he spoke out word by word. Speak! Where did Earth's sovereign bring Lil Luo to? The aura of death enveloped Ghost King. When Diamo Xian's icy cold eyes looked at him, he only felt as though he was being sliced into pieces. Fear occupied Ghost King's heart. He shivered and said in a hoarse voice that was a trap set by the earthly sovereign and the palace master of the secluded palace, just to take that little girl away. Trap! Diamo Xian's eyes turned darker and more treacherous. The Ghost King's heart trembled as he looked at the Azura-like death god, especially when he saw the strange purple light flowing in the depths of the death god's eyes. His whole body trembled with fright. He was afraid of death. He was more afraid than anyone else. It had taken him a great deal of effort to find the bandits. He still hadn't gotten his revenge. He absolutely did not want to die. Even if he were to die, he would die after the bandits. The Ghost King's eyes were bloodshot as he was being strangled. He opened his mouth and tried his best to pry open Diamo Xian's hand. His mouth opened and closed, indicating that he wanted to speak. Diamo Xian's eyes drooped. His icy cold gaze was as cold as ice. The thought of Yi Qing Luo and Earth's sovereign disappearing together. The minute he thought that Yi Qing Luo was not Earth Sovereign's match. The minute he thought that Yi Qing Luo might be injured. Diamo Xian's heart was filled with an inexplicable anxiety and ruthlessness. He stared at the Ghost King for some time before he loosened the strength of his fingers. On his finger, the profound dragon ring with the dragon totem was sparkling with a bright red glow. But under that glow, there was still no trace of Yi Qing Luo's presence and the profound phoenix ring's reaction. The profound dragon ring at this moment started to move uncontrollably. The flowing red glow was moving at lightning speed. Chapter 34:20. Even the profound dragon ring panicked because it was unable to sense the existence of the profound phoenix ring. Moreover, it was him. Logically speaking, the connection between the profound dragon ring and the profound phoenix ring, unless they were separated by a plane or a space, then there would be no reaction. Where on earth did the earthly sovereign bring Yi Qing Luo to? The more he thought, the colder the purple glint in Diamo Xian's eyes grew. The ruthless aura which was emitting from his entire body gradually deepened. A bloodthirsty, murderous intent started to spread in his heart. His fingers, which had just relaxed, clenched tightly again. Cough! Ghost King had yet to catch his breath when he was suddenly pinched by a sudden force, causing him to cough violently. Speak! Where on earth is Lil Luo? Where is she? Dmo Xian's voice grew colder. Ghost King opened his mouth and used all his strength. It's an array. Secluded Palace's array. When he finished this sentence, he almost used up all his strength. The tightness in his throat made him lose all his strength to struggle. Dmo Xian's gaze was cold and severe as his fingers loosened, allowing Ghost King to fall onto the ground. This distance was half a floor's height. The Ghost King fell heavily to the ground without knowing what had happened. His body brushed past the sharp stones on the ground. He didn't have the time to cry out in pain as he kept panting, taking in deep breaths. Speak! Dmo Xian slowly landed in front of Ghost King. His purple long robe fluttered along with the strong wind, adding a chilly and murderous aura. At this moment, the Ghost King no longer had any of the hysteria and craziness from before. His hysteria, his madness, only targeted at God Thief. Ghost King hugged his neck as his voice was hoarse as he hurriedly opened his mouth. Secluded Palace's target had always been Yiqing Luo. In the land of transformation, the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace wanted me to bring Yiqing Luo back to Secluded Palace. It's the same this time. Secluded Palace made use of Earthly Sovereign's hatred towards you, to let Earthly Sovereign and Yiqing Luo cross hands, then taking the opportunity to bring Yiqing Luo away from the array which had been set up earlier without anyone knowing. I only delayed the time. Following Ghost King's words, Dmo Xian's arrogance became more and more subdued. The sound of his fluttering purple robe became even more resounding. Every blow seemed to strike the Ghost King's heart. That dispirited and sinister aura was like a giant wave that reached the heavens, spreading to every corner of the air. It made it harder for him to breathe. The Ghost King could clearly sense the murderous aura emitted from Dmo Xian's body. He was shocked. Dmo Xian had already raised his palm to meet his head, chopping down directly. Dizun, please show mercy. Before the Ghost King could react, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. Then he felt his body become heavy. A figure stood in front of him. Oh! A muffled groan came from the person on top of him. The Ghost King was stunned. He looked at the figure in front of him in disbelief. Saint Thief. Dmo Xian kept his palm as his cold eyes glanced at God Thief, who had rushed forward to receive his palm. God Thief's mouth was overflowing with blood, but he forced himself to stand in front of the Ghost King. This matter is Ghost King's fault. But the most important thing now is to get Last Qing Luo back. If Last Qing Luo is really injured because of this, I'm willing to use my life to compensate. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with viciousness as his profound qi overflowed. After staring at God Thief for several breaths. Chapter 34:21. The majestic and thick flame enveloped the battlefield. The surrounding air stirred up huge waves. Over at Nether Palace's side, tens of thousands of corpse puppets under this wave vanished into thin air, and those Nether Palace disciples were also suppressed by this wave of profound qi as they fled in all directions. Dmo Xian was enraged. His aura continued to rise. The entire East Continent's air seemed to be distorted together. The entire space was shaking, squeezing. That palm which God Thief had just suffered, although at the crucial moment, Dmo Xian had retracted the power of his palm, but the remnant power still shook his internal organs. The pressure of this majestic aura. God Thief's body immediately swayed as he fell backwards. Ghost! Ghost Thief! Ghost King shouted this word in panic. His eyes kept staring at God Thief, whose mouth was overflowing with blood, but his face was deathly pale. His throat felt like it was being choked by an icy cold hand, making it extremely difficult for him to even breathe. Overlord. Gui Wu looked at the man who was shrouded in a gloomy aura. As he spoke indifferently, the 3,000 Peach Blossom side has already found out the real location of Nether Palace. If you rush over now, you should still be able to make it. Saying that, Gui Wu's palm moved. A piece of leather floated in midair. Mo Xian's deep eyes were suffused with a biting, cold glint. He stretched out his hand. The leather followed the profound wave as it fell into his palm. He swept a glance at the map as his deep and cold peach blossom eyes looked at Gui Wu coldly. Is this true? Peach's ability, you are very clear. Facing Mo Xian's penetrating aura, Gui Wu's expression was still calm and indifferent. Mo Xian's 5 fingers, which were holding the map, tightened. Leave this place to us, this calamity of Nirvana realm. We're already involved in it. We will not sit back and do nothing. Gui Wu said indifferently. The purple light in Mo Xian's eyes was like the turbulent waves of the undercurrent, surging wave after wave. A few breaths. Without any hesitation, his figure stretched out and turned into a remnant shadow, disappearing. Where did Overlord go? Overlord and Madam Emperor have left. Then what should we do? The various powerhouses watched as the 2 saviors disappeared from the battlefield. He could not help but feel a sense of fear. There were also many conspiracy theorists who spoke in fear. Did His Majesty and Madam D run away? They couldn't defeat the army of the land, so they abandoned us and fled. As soon as these words left his mouth, regardless of whether it was true or not, everyone's hearts were shaken. For a time, everyone in the Nirvana realm was in a state of panic. Earlier, because of Mo Xian's rage, the joy of dispersing those 10,000 corpses had suddenly vanished. What nonsense are you spouting? When Yan Shaoyi heard this, she immediately raised the black sickle blade in exasperation and slashed in the direction of the conspiracy theorist. Are you all blind? Qing Luo was brought away by the Earth Emperor's scheme. What escape? Can't you see that our world mercenary group's people are still here? Can't you see that Qing Luo's war pets are still here? The representatives of the conspiracy theorists were so shocked that they took a few steps back. He wanted to argue, but looking at the aggressive Yan Shaoyi, and behind Yan Shaoyi, the unfriendly faces of the young men and women, he was stunned, not daring to say a single word. Even if Qing Luo and Overlord are not on the battlefield, but similarly the Earth Emperor is not on the battlefield, so the collaborators of the secluded palace will not continue to fight. Long Yunjan's icy cold voice rang. Chapter 34:22. This battle, no matter if Qing Luo is here or not, no matter if the Overlord is here or not, we must carry on with the battle. Even if we have to drag it out, we have to drag it out till Overlord and Qing Luo join hands to destroy the palace of Abyss Base. Long Yunjan was the leader of the World Mercenary Group. His words were naturally more convincing than Yan Shaoyi's or anyone else's. In addition, Long Yunjan was as cold as ice. This chill was able to dispel the fear in everyone's hearts, especially after hearing the words, "Destroy the base of the Palace of Darkness." They were even more convinced. Just now, the conversation between the Overlord and Master Guwu had been heard clearly by those who were standing nearby. The Overlord took the map of the Palace of Darkness and went to the Palace of Darkness. If the base of the Gloomy Palace was destroyed, then the Nirvana realm could be saved. That's right. Even if they had to stall until the Overlord destroyed the base of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. The other side, Yi Qing Luo, felt a splitting headache. Because of this sharp pain, her consciousness became much clearer. She slowly opened her eyes. What entered his eyes was a dark hall. The hall was empty. There was nothing on display. A cool breeze caressed their faces, and the entire palace gave off an eerie feeling of emptiness. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her head as she surveyed her surroundings. He was a little confused. Where was he? She slowly sat up straight, her head still throbbing with pain. She frowned as she recalled what had happened before she fainted. That's right. She had almost been enveloped by the sword wave released by the earthly sovereign and was in a dilemma. Fortunately, Xian Gui was there to protect them. Xian Gui's hard turtle shell could resist the sword waves of the earthly sovereign perfectly. Because of this, she wasn't affected by the sword wave. However, the profound light released by the sword wave was indeed a little too dazzling. She could only listen to the sound to determine what was happening outside of the sword wave. Ah Xian, she heard Ah Xian's voice. She heard the sound of Ah Xian being stopped. He also sensed Ah Xian's anger. She was worried that Ah Xian would be too worried, so she tried to calm him down. However, just as she finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, he felt a strong suction force coming at him. Then, a white light flashed before his eyes. Boundless sword waves engulfed her. Then, she lost consciousness. Then, when she opened her eyes, she found herself in an unfamiliar and empty hall. Master! Suddenly, he heard an extremely soft sound beside his ear. Yi Qing Luo felt that her ears were starting to itch. She raised her hand and touched it. Then he felt something hard. He held it in front of his eyes. It was actually a miniature version of Xian Gui. The size was about the same as Yi Qing Luo's palm. It was a green tortoise. However, there were two snake-like and dragon-like creatures coiled around the tortoiseshell. This style he looks familiar. Where have I seen him before? Master, this place is shrouded in a very gloomy yin qi. Staying here for a long time will pollute your heart. Xian Gui's voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's contemplation. Indeed, the atmosphere here was very stifling. After breathing for a long time, he could feel a slight chill in his body. She put Xian Gui on her shoulder and propped herself up. His body was still a little weak. The stinging pain in her head became more obvious because of her movements. Chapter 34:23. But, after a round of searching, Yi Qing Luo discovered that there was no exit in this palace. The entire palace was like a cage, other than the two large skylights on the roof. Yi Qing Luo didn't find any place that could connect to the outside world. She tried to slip out from the skylight, but the moment she got close to the edge of the skylight, Old Man Song reminded her nervously, "Backlash barrier? Lass, the person who set up this barrier is much stronger than you. You can't get close to this barrier." Backlash barrier? Yi Qing Luo had heard of this kind of barrier. It could be said that it was an extremely insidious barrier. If it wasn't someone with stronger ability who could forcefully break the barrier, if the trapped person wanted to escape from the spirit formation, he would be able to escape. The moment she touched the barrier, there was an 80% possibility of being swallowed by the backlash barrier. In other words, Yi Qing Luo was completely trapped in this palace to death. Who was it that trapped her in here? What was the purpose of trapping her in here? Could it be Earth Sovereign? Or this was another conspiracy of the secluded palace? Yi Qing Luo, who was deep in thought, suddenly felt a dull pain in her brain. Her petite body swayed and immediately knelt on the ground. She held her forehead with one hand and pressed it hard. "Master," Xian Gui said worriedly, "the atmosphere here is getting gloomier and gloomier." After a long period of breathing, no matter how strong Master's willpower is, I'm afraid you can't resist the pollution of this atmosphere. Xian Gui's voice lowered, revealing some guilt. If the one beside Master is Vermilion Bird, it must have a way to wash away the gloomy atmosphere here. Yi Qing Luo's breathing paused slightly when mentioning Vermilion Bird. Indeed, if Qi Yan was here, its blazing flame could purify the dirty atmosphere here. But unfortunately, before she fell into a coma, she only remembered that Xian Gui, who was standing in front of her, suddenly bit her sleeve. And then, when she woke up, there was only Xian Gui beside her, and the other battle pets. They didn't follow her back to the pet space, but it was good that Shiju, Chi-Chi, Chien, and Azure Dragon didn't return to the pet space. This also meant that they stayed on the battlefield in the East Continent. There were 3 sacred beasts and an evolving panther dragon on the battlefield. The Nirvana realm would have a higher chance of winning. Don't blame yourself. Yi Qing Luo gasped lightly. With you around, I have another layer of protection. Xian Gui's turtle shell was extremely hard. Compared to the barrier that could withstand attacks, it was much sturdier. In this strange place, there was such a safeguard. That way, she would be able to block the fatal damage and have more opportunities to counterattack. Yi Qing Luo adjusted her sitting posture and slowly sat on the ground to rest. She shook her head vigorously. He wanted to shake the dull pain in his head to the back of his mind. Little girl, it seems like someone intentionally wants to trap you here and use this filthy, baleful aura to pollute your heart and control you. Old man Tsang's voice rang out. His voice was like a source of warmth, soothing the dull pain in her head bit by bit. Yi Qing Luo held her head and didn't reply. The atmosphere in the palace was getting gloomier and gloomier. It was full of baleful aura. He just walked around the palace a little. She didn't just have a dull headache. Even her heart was somewhat chaotic and impetuous. This was the purpose of the other party to trap her here. Chapter 34:24. Could it be? Was it the Palace of Darkness? A long time ago, the dark forces wanted to make use of the profound Yin Qi to control her consciousness. The dark forces joined the Palace of Darkness because both parties had the same goal. Then, there was a possibility that the Palace of Darkness wanted to control her consciousness to achieve some kind of goal. Recalling the conversation between Ghost King and the Palace Lord of the Palace of Darkness, they had mentioned it before. What the Palace of Darkness wanted was this body of hers. No matter what method they used, as long as she was still breathing, it would be enough to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness. Yi Qing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. That's right. The Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. The Palace of Darkness wanted to control her consciousness so that she would willingly become the vessel of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. And the Palace of Darkness wanted to use her to find the Divine Emperor's tomb. The Palace of Darkness's motive right from the start was these 2 points. Yi Qing Luo, who understood the Palace of Darkness's motive, clenched her slender fingers tightly. If that was the case, all the more she could not be influenced by the surrounding Yin Qi. Yi Qing Luo shut her eyes forcefully to make her consciousness clearer, because in the past 10 over years, as the young matriarch of a hidden family in the 21st century, the training she had undergone was unimaginable. Her willpower was much higher than ordinary people by several times, but even for her, sitting in this hall, not only did Xiao Qin have a splitting headache, even his heart felt vaguely irritated, an indescribable feeling of irritation surging into his heart. She used all her strength to control the evil fire in her heart. Her slender fingers clenched tightly into her palm. Her round nails were embedded into her flesh, imprinting a crescent arc shape, using the prickling sensation to stimulate her consciousness. Master, I seem to see a ray of light. Xian Gui, who was on her shoulder, leaped up and speedily dashed towards the center of the palace. Xian Gui! Yi Qing Luo called out, but didn't get any response from Xian Gui. She could only prop herself up and walk towards the direction where Xian Gui was dashing towards. Perhaps the Yin Qi in the palace was getting thicker and thicker, or perhaps she had breathed for too long in this palace, causing the Yin Qi to enter her body. Even a simple walk was extremely strenuous for her. Master, look here. Xian Gui's voice was filled with excitement. Yi-Ching Luo took a deep breath and quickened her pace. She followed Xian Gui's voice and found his position in the dim hall. The small one was squatting in the corner of the hall. A thin beam of light shone on the two snakes and dragons on Xian Gui's back. It flickered between light and dark, making the two small things look even more treacherous and eerie. Light? There was actually a ray of light in this corner. If it wasn't for the fact that Xian Gui was so small and happened to see it, even if she was locked up for decades, she might not be able to discover the problem with this corner of the wall. She stooped down and used the glowing flame fan to create a wind blade that swept towards the corner of the wall. Then he cautiously picked up Xian Gui and took a few steps back. The wind blade hit the corner of the wall. Boom! A loud noise was heard. The wall suddenly broke into pieces and collapsed. Yi-Ching Luo was stunned. What was going on? Wasn't this a cage specially made to trap her? And even specially set up a backlash enchantment? This wall, how could it collapse so easily? Yi-Ching Luo expressed a dumbfounded look. Boom, boom, boom. The rubble on the wall fell to the ground. The dust rolled and gradually dispersed. There was not an exit behind the collapsed wall. Chapter 34:25. It was unknown what kind of brick the wall was made of, but the engraved murals were extremely clear. Yi-Ching Luo sensed for a moment. After confirming that there was no danger, he took a few steps forward and examined the murals on the wall. The light here was too dim. In addition, the carvings on the wall were very messy. Yi-Ching Luo looked at it for some time before she could vaguely see. It looked like a human-shaped mural. On the mural, there were 5 small objects that looked like jewelry floating around the human figure. On the other side of the mural was a complex totem. The lines were messy and complicated. No matter how she looked at it, Yi-Ching Luo couldn't understand what that totem was. These murals, he heard Old Man Song's surprised voice. Following that, Yi-Ching Luo's wrist felt hot. Old Song floated out from the azure dew bracelet. He was now in his corporeal form. He was dressed in a white robe, and he was extremely eye-catching in the dark palace. He rushed to the front of the mural and raised his trembling hand, wanting to touch the human-shaped totem carved on it. But the finger is about to touch the mural. Then he retracted his arm stiffly. However, his eyes were still fixed on the mural. It was as if he was reminiscing about something through the murals. Old Man Song. Yi-Ching Luo walked to the back of Old Man Song and looked at his expression. You know what's carved on this mural? Old Man Song's hands slowly hung at his side. He stared intently at the mural, and the expression on his face was somewhat moved. The figure on the mural is the Emperor of the Divine Emperors. Old Man Song's voice was somewhat trembling. If one looked closely, I can see that. As he spoke, even his body was trembling slightly. This was excitement and nostalgia. The Emperor of the God Emperor. These 4 words had completely shocked Yi-Ching Luo. Isn't that the legendary monarch of the divine monarchs? How could the Emperor of a divine emperor be carved on a wall in the form of a mural? I can't be wrong. This is the Emperor of the divine emperor, and these... Old Man Song raised his hand and gently stroked the 5 small things floating beside the human-shaped totem. Do they look familiar? Familiar? This kind of abstract carving. Yi-Ching Luo could only vaguely see the outlines and shapes of these carvings. She stared at it for a while. Suddenly, his eyelashes trembled. His finger pressed on one of the small things. Unlike Old Man Song, she was still separated by air and did not dare to touch him. Instead, he placed his hand completely on top of it. This is the azure water ring. Yi-Ching Luo's hand pressed on the totem suspended above the head of the human totem. That carved little thing and her azure water ring, whether it was the shape, the outline, or the size, all perfectly matched. Then she brought her wrist down. That totem that was like a thin line, as expected, also overlapped with the azure water soap chain. Vast water artifact. This mural depicted the Emperor of Divine Emperors and the Blue Water Divine Artifact. That's right. Old Man Tsang looked at Yi Qing Luo's hand and the mural with a burning gaze. After a long time, he furrowed his white eyebrows. But why would there be a portrait of the Divine Emperor and a portrait of the Azure Water Divine Artifact here? I'm afraid this place is no longer the Nirvana realm. It was impossible for such a mural to appear in the Nirvana realm. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her hand. Her fingertip swept over the profound phoenix ring. From the beginning, she realized that this place might not be within the boundaries of the Nirvana realm. Chapter 34:26. The connection between the profound phoenix ring and profound dragon ring, unless they were separated by a plane or a space. Otherwise, it was impossible to lose its reaction. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips as she looked up and down at the mural. Why is the totem of the Emperor of God carved in this palace? Then the totem opposite the Emperor of God, what is it carved on? Old Man Tsang slowly shifted his gaze onto her. His gaze was deep and gloomy. That is the Emperor of God's tomb. The Emperor of God's tomb. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. She frowned slightly as her eyes were filled with astonishment. The portrait of the Emperor of God, the portrait of the vast water divine weapon, and the Emperor of God's tomb. Old Man Tsang's expression turned solemn. Looks like the other party's motive of trapping you in this palace is because of the Emperor of God's tomb. Listening to Old Man Tsang's words, Yi Qing Luo linked it back to those guesses which she had told the mistress of the Palace of Seclusion. Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk. This is the Palace of Seclusion's turf. You're indeed the lady who made the Overlord and my disciple head over heels for you. You're indeed intelligent. Suddenly, a cold voice was heard from all directions in the palace. That voice was so cold that it made one shudder. Yi Qing Luo surveyed the surroundings alertly as she extended her senses to the maximum, but she still couldn't sense any other aura. She couldn't even tell which direction the voice came from. That voice seemed to be very close, yet it seemed to be extremely far away. More accurately, that voice was illusory, as though it had enveloped the entire palace. You are. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her eyes were vigilant and icy cold. Her vision swept through the surroundings once again. She then slowly spat out a sentence, word by word. Palace of Seclusion. The real mastermind behind the scenes. Huh. That cold and gloomy voice laughed sinisterly. That cold and treacherous laughter made Yi Qing Luo's scalp go numb. Controlling the Palace of Dark Seclusion behind the scenes, finding countless people with high status in the upper realm to help the Palace of Dark Seclusion. He even stopped the people from the upper realm from intervening when they invaded the Nirvana realm. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a faint smile. Since your status is noble and your ability is powerful, why must you persist on scheming against a lower realm young lady like me? The smile on her lips was full of disdain. Don't you think it's degrading? Miss Yi, I really appreciate your praise. The laughter of the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness became even more ethereal and eerie. You're right. I do have a noble status and powerful strength, but what I want is not just this little bit of status. Perhaps he was too confident in himself. Perhaps it was because he was certain that Yi Qing Luo would lose her sense of self in this hall. The person behind the scenes of Gloomy Palace was very honest. He patiently answered Yi Qing Luo's question. Hearing the other party's reply, Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed a glint of darkness. There seemed to be waves surging in the depths of his eyes. You want to become the Emperor of the Divine Emperors? She asked. The Emperor of the Divine Emperors? The person behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness gave a disdainful smile. If I am able to obtain the inheritance of the Emperor of the Divine Emperors, I will be the Emperor of the Divine Emperors, adding on to my ability. What does the Emperor of the Divine Emperors count for? The minute these words were spoken, Yi Qing Luo was completely shocked. Chapter 34:27. Wasn't the ambition of the person behind the scenes of the Nether Palace a little too big? The other party was actually thinking of to dominate the upper realm? Was this the rhythm of wanting to be the master of the world? Even if the person behind the scenes of the Nether Palace wanted to be the master of the world and had the ability to become the master of the world, the law of Heavenly Way would not allow one person to control all the planes, the entire world, or even the universe. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the so-called upper realm, nirvana realm, and other levels of distribution of the various planes. All the planes were mutually restricting and mutually balancing each other's existence, as though he could read Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. That person laughed sinisterly again. As long as I have absolute ability. Even if Heavenly Way does not allow it, I will go against the heavens. Why can't I? That arrogant tone was filled with self-confidence, as though everything was in the palm of his hand. Yi Qing Luo frowned. Since your target is me, the vessel that the divine phoenix, profound jade heart, why? Still want to destroy Nirvana realm? It's just a waste plane, a bunch of waste existing in this world. It's just a waste of resources. That person's tone was filled with disdain. I want to rebuild this world. From that person's words, Yi Qing Luo could roughly guess the other party's character. That person was not only confident, but also extremely arrogant. To put it bluntly, that person wanted to be the creator god of the world. He wanted to control the entire world in his own hands. Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, that person laughed arrogantly, calling out Yi Qing Luo's name. That sinister and treacherous tone. It made Yi Qing Luo's scalp go numb. She congealed her senses, scanning the surroundings alertly but didn't reply. Immediately following that, she heard that illusory voice, sounding sinisterly, "You make me very surprised." Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled. This sentence was absolutely not considered as a compliment. But even if it was a compliment, being complimented by this kind of person was even more disgusting than seeing that person eating *T. A low-grade waste plane. I thought it should be easy to rebuild. But because of you, it caused my plan, time and time again, to be destroyed. That person's tone rose slightly. There was even a hint of deeper meaning in his tone. A low-grade trash plane caused me to suffer such heavy losses. Tell me, how should I punish you? Yi Qing Luo's curly long eyelashes trembled slightly. She tried her best to restrain the turbulence in her heart. He had to maintain a calm and indifferent expression on his face, especially at this time. She couldn't afford to panic. Once she panicked, his aura would weaken. This would definitely give the other party a chance to take advantage of it. The other party was the mastermind behind the Dark Palace. It was also rumored that he had a very high status in the upper realm. His strength was so strong that it made people tremble in fear. If the other party wanted to take her life, he could do so with a flick of his finger. She could not panic. He had to remain calm. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath as her pink lips curled upwards, curling into a cold arc of ridicule. A thin layer of frost covered her long and narrow eyes. Before we find the divine emperor's tomb, you won't punish me. Her voice was flat and emotionless. It was as if she was certain that the other party wouldn't do anything to her. The indistinguishable voice paused for a moment, as though he had not expected Yi Qing Luo to reply in this way. Several breaths later, that person started laughing. The sinister laughter was like circle after circle of ripples, rippling out in the hall layer by layer. Chapter 34:28. Yi Qing Luo, what makes you think that this seat will not punish you? That man laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with ridicule. You've made this seat see you in a different light. There aren't many people who can remain so calm in front of the seat. That man's laughter stopped abruptly. The next moment, that man's voice turned gloomy and cold for no reason. Too bad, your self-righteous reliance is useless. In the palace, the gloomy aura started to surge. Every time Yi Qing Luo took a breath, she could feel a gush of coldness seeping into her body along with her breath. What this seat wants is your body and that divine phoenix profound heart jade of yours. As long as you're still breathing, that's enough. That man laughed lightly. This seat has 100 ways to let you be tortured and still keep your last breath. Yi Qing Luo. It seemed that all arrogant people had the heart of Yap Liangqin. Yi Qing Luo wasn't frightened by that man's words. She didn't feel any discomfort from the dense yin qi in the surroundings. Her expression was still that calm and composed. Back then, the King of Darkness also wanted this divine phoenix profound heart jade of mine as a vessel. That man didn't reply, as though he was curious. Why did Yi Qing Luo mention the King of Darkness at this moment? Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled. The real palace, lord of the secluded palace. What you want is also this vessel of mine. So, that man was curious. Yi Qing Luo raised her fair hand and pressed on her heart as she gave a low laugh. You, a person with such great ambitions, you shouldn't waste your time on me. A young lady from the lower realm. But you trapped me in this palace and used evil methods to pollute my heart, and even specially appeared. It seemed that you appeared because I sensed the totem on the murals in this palace. But in actual fact, you're merely using your words to bewitch me, messing up my inner heart. You're also delaying time, so that the evil qi here can control my consciousness and soul. Speaking of this, Yi Qing's smile revealed some confidence and trust. If I'm not wrong, you should know that Xian is on his way to save me. You're worried that Xian's appearance will ruin your plan today. Yi Qing Luo's analysis was logical. From start to finish, that person did not make a single sound. There was no rebuttal, no acknowledgement. It was as if he had disappeared. But Yi Qing Luo knew. The man was still there. He did not refute or admit it. It was only because she had guessed correctly. A truly powerful and arrogant person. It was disdain to lie to a little girl from the lower realm like her. So she guessed right. That person would not retort. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother whether that person would reply or not. Immediately after, he continued, Both of you want the divine phoenix profound heart jade and also want this vessel of mine. This also proves that this divine phoenix profound heart jade is something that neither the King of Darkness nor you can control or use as you wish. In other words, apart from me, no one else can unleash the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. This is also the reason why one of you wants to use the profound yin qi to control me, while the other wants to use the evil qi to control me. She raised her head as a calm glint circulated in her long and narrow eyes. Chapter 30, 4:29. Yi Qing Luo's last word fell. The entire hall was silent, so quiet that the sound of the wind blowing the dust on the ground could be heard. Yi Qing Luo maintained her smile and did not continue to speak, quietly waiting for the other party's reaction. The quieter the other party was, this meant that what she had analyzed was correct. This also meant that she was in control of the sovereignty. Just like this, the silence lasted for about half an incense stick of time. In the air, an extremely soft, almost inaudible laughter was heard. Yi Qing Luo is indeed the chosen master of the divine phoenix, profound jade heart. Really smart, makes one want to destroy you. Accompanied by the laughter was that person's sinister voice. Are you sure you want to destroy me? Yi Qing Luo smiled. That person laughed even louder. Good. Very good. Yi Qing Luo, you can indeed be arrogant now. Wait till I dig out the divine phoenix, profound jade, heart along with your heart. I will make you wish you were dead. This sentence was also an indirect acknowledgement. The other party could not touch her now. What she was sure of, speculated, analyzed, all of it. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly. I will wait and see. Humph. This word floated in the air. Immediately after, there was silence again. The quieter it was, the more strange the atmosphere. A trace of danger filled the entire space. Old Man Song and Xian Gui moved and quickly blocked in front of Yi Qing Luo, full of vigilance. It's all right, that person has left. Yi Qing Luo heaved a sigh of relief and slowly sat cross-legged on the ground. Left? Old Man Song turned around and looked at Yi Qing Luo. The girl's face was full of exhaustion. Where was the confidence from earlier? Lass, if that person is really the mastermind behind the secluded palace, that means that person is from the upper realm. Most likely someone from the heaven realm and above. If you provoke that person like this and really angers him, even Old Man Song and Xian Gui can't save you. Old Man Song thought of the scene where Yi Qing Luo angered that person, and his heart jumped. That person is from the God realm. Yi Qing Luo leaned against the wall and rubbed her brows hard. That person's ambition was to become the creator of all things in the world. He wanted to become the ruler of the world. Such an ambitious person. It was definitely impossible for him to be someone from the heaven realm. The God realm. Old Man Song's complexion suddenly darkened. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and heavily exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. If we don't infuriate him, it's impossible for him to leave this place, and we'll be in even more danger. She could feel it while talking to that person. The stabbing pain in her head became more and more obvious. Just like what she had just analyzed, the man was talking to her. He was simply bewitching her heart. Her willpower was gradually diminishing. If she hadn't figured out that person's motive, she would have died. I'm afraid there's a high possibility that that person's plan will succeed. The Palace of Tenebrous Darkness wants Master's profound heart, jade, and Master's body. At least, before they need Master's profound phoenix heart jade as a vessel, Master will be safe. Xian Gui moved closer to Yi Qing Luo and comforted her. Yi Qing Luo touched its tortoise shell, but if I continue to stay here, no matter how strong my willpower is, I might still be contaminated. She shook her aching head and caressed the profound phoenix ring with her fingertips. Chapter 34:30. But as time went by, Yi Qing Luo breathed more and more yin qi. Her whole body was not only cold to the point of almost oozing a thin layer of frost. Her head also seemed to be pierced by a thin needle. She was trembling from head to toe. Old Man Song and Xian Gui kept talking to her. This was not the worst. As time went by, Yi Qing Luo could even feel that the power in her body was gradually fading. The azure dew chain on her wrist and the azure dew ring on her fingertips were emitting scorching heat. It should be that her body was getting weaker, causing her body to be unable to withstand the power of the two divine weapons. After the power of the divine weapons gradually faded, it was even more strenuous for her to resist the evil yin qi around her. She couldn't sit still and wait for death. But now, even moving was extremely strenuous for her. Just at this moment, Yi Qing Luo's sharp ears moved. Xian Gui's small body suddenly became big and blocked in front of Yi Qing Luo. What's that sound? Old Man Song stood up and looked ahead vigilantly. Vaguely, he seemed to hear a slight sound coming from the hall. Then the sound was getting closer and closer. A ray of black light suddenly flashed. In front of her, two figures appeared out of thin air. Those two people were shrouded in a cloud of dense black qi. Their eyes, shrouded in black qi, were flashing a cold light. You! Yi Qing Luo's expression changed slightly when she saw the two people clearly. One of them, a thin but tall man, slowly walked forward. The cold and gloomy voice carried a chill that made people shudder. Yi Qing Luo, long time no see. Yi Qing Luo's pupils were fixed on that person. The man's age was about 40 or so. That face was so thin that there was only skin and bones left, looking extremely mean and penetrating, especially the black qi emitting from his body. It made him look more and more gloomy and horrified. He licked his dry lips, his eyes filled with a crazy smile. Yi Qing Luo, I always want to peel off your tendons, peel off your skin, and drink your blood. He walked forward slowly. As her words left her mouth, the black qi on his body became even more intense. That was all hatred and malicious intent towards Yi Qing Luo. Pharaoh, you actually degenerated yourself to become a corpse puppet. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as her penetrating gaze sized up the middle-aged man in front of her. Ever since the battle on the West Continent, she had never seen Pharaoh Crane before. To be more precise, she had never seen the 3 pharaohs who had escaped from the Dark Forces. Only a few Saint techniques worked for the Dark Nether Palace and were rather active. Unexpectedly, he would meet Pharaoh He again here. Yi Qing Luo could sense that Pharaoh He's aura had changed. It was not just the aura. His movements were thick, sinister, and cold to the extreme. I just want you to die. Pharaoh Crane's mouth twitched maliciously. As long as I can avenge Dai, I don't care what I do. Clearly, Pharaoh He had fallen into madness. His sinister eyes suddenly turned to look at the man beside him, who was also overflowing with evil aura. Si Yanmu, this is your enemy, do you see it? Pharaoh He's voice was cold and filled with bewitchment. Your Asyang died in her hands. If you want to avenge your Asyang, this is the only chance. Beside Pharaoh He, that man who is also overflowing with sinister aura. Chapter 34-31. The former president of the Heavenly Academy Faculty Council. Later, in order to follow Xiang Xingfa, he joined Si Yanmu of the Netherworld Palace. Last time, in the secret base of secluded Abyss Palace in the South Waves continent, Si Yanmu took advantage of the chaos to escape. She thought that it was because Si Yanmu had brought them to the secret chamber to refine the dead corpse puppets. He had caused such a huge disaster. The Netherworld Palace would definitely not let Si Yanmu off. Unexpectedly, Si Yanmu was still alive. No, to be more precise, he couldn't be considered alive. Because now, Si Yanmu had also become a corpse puppet. But what surprised Yi Qing Luo was that Si Yanmu's aura was much weaker than Pharaoh He. It felt like Si Yanmu was not a successful new type of corpse puppet. However, Si Yanmu seemed to have his own consciousness and was not considered a semi-finished product. I want to avenge Asyang. Si Yanmu also took a step forward and walked side by side with Pharaoh He towards Yi Qing Luo. How did you two get in here? What are you trying to do? Old Man Song and Xiangui saw the both of them taking action and immediately blocked in front of Yi Qing Luo. Based on Yi Qing Luo's current physical condition, she was unable to engage in battle. Pharaoh He raised his hand and pointed directly at Yi Qing Luo. I said I want her life. Si Yanmu was also filled with hatred as he stared at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly. He did not intend to explain to Si Yanmu. Back on the battlefield, the one who killed Sacred Art Elephant was Butterfly's Sacred Art. Si Yanmu would not believe it even if she told him. Yi Qing Luo was too lazy to explain to Si Yanmu. She half-crossed her legs and rested her arms on her knees. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the two of them quietly. That posture, that appearance. She was so lazy that it didn't seem like she was facing an enemy who wanted her life. She curled her pink lips and smiled calmly. You are the people behind the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. They let you in, right? So what if I am? So what if I'm not? Pharaoh, he was smiling, but his eyes were filled with malice. If that's the case, then I can be at ease. After all, none of you would dare to kill me. Yi Qing Luo smiled confidently as the corners of her lips curled into a faint cold arc. If not, I'm also very assured because you can't kill me. Pharaoh, his face darkened, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. Are you so sure that you won't die? Your boss can't bear for me to die. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly as she raised her other hand and gently caressed her own face. No matter what, I'm still as beautiful as a flower, devastatingly beautiful. If I die, the world will lose a beautiful lady like me. Isn't that such a pity? You. Pharaoh, he was infuriated by Yi Qing Luo's shamelessness. He clenched his fists tightly. His entire body was shrouded in a sinister aura, like a flame, constantly burning. Even that pair of sinister eyes was filled with a terrifying black light. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards. Facing the infuriated Pharaoh, she was still that calm and indifferent. Actually, he could guess it. The hall was surrounded by a backlash barrier. These two people must have been sent in by the people behind the Palace of Darkness. His goal, of course, it wasn't to take her life, but it was much crueler than taking her life. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she leaned against the wall, trying to clear her mind. After that, she maintained her composure as she continued with a smile. Looks like Xian will be here very soon. Your boss is so anxious that he threw any Tom, Dick, or Harry here. Chapter 34-32. I'm talking about whoever replied. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows and glanced at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Si Yanmu's face was filled with anger as his eyes shot out a chilly evil chi, just as he was about to open his mouth to scold Yi Qing Luo. But Pharaoh, he raised his hand and stopped his words. Si Yanmu's insulting words were stuck in his throat. His handsome face was flushed red. Pharaoh, he looked coldly at the calm Yi Qing Luo and said indifferently, Yi Qing Luo, has anyone told you that this mouth of yours and your character makes it easy to be taken advantage of? He carried a high and mighty attitude as he looked down at Yi Qing Luo, who was leaning against the wall. The disdain in his eyes and the hatred that he was determined to get what he wanted were constantly burning. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head and glanced at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Seems. No, then I shall be the first to tell you, and I shall use my actions to tell you. Pharaoh, his gaze was sinister as he took a step forward. His thick, profound energy and the eviline energy surrounding his body suddenly rose sharply. Tom, Dick, and Harry? He laughed sinisterly. How does it feel to die in the hands of the Tom, Dick, and Harry? Yi Qing Luo, you're just an immobile waste now. Do you need me to teach you how to live longer? Look at that pretty face of yours. If you give in and say a few good words, I might have tender feelings for you and let you die more comfortably. Ha ha ha. After he finished this sentence, Pharaoh, he laughed extremely wretchedly. Towards Pharaoh, his words, Yi Qing Luo didn't notice, because when Pharaoh, he released his profound energy, the evil chi enveloping him started to disperse. Her head started to hurt even more. Originally, it was like a thin needle piercing into her head. Now they had turned into thick needles, stabbing her head with all their might. Her consciousness started to drift. Yi Qing Luo more or less understood the reason why the mastermind of the secluded palace sent Pharaoh He and Si and Mu into the hall. Perhaps Xian had really rushed over to save her. So the mastermind of the secluded palace could no longer wait patiently to let her lose her consciousness and accept their control. Therefore, he sent Pharaoh He and Si and Mu into the hall. They wanted to use this to force Yi Qing Luo to take action against the both of them. Once they took action, Yi Qing Luo was about to release her profound energy. Once the dark force was released, the evil Yin Qi would be able to follow Yi Qing Luo's limbs and bones even faster, seeping into her bone marrow and even her profound jade heart. In particular, the bodies of Pharaoh He and Si and Mu were emitting a strong Yin evil Qi. Even if Yi Qing Luo didn't make a move, Pharaoh He and Si and Mu made their move. The evil Yin Qi on his body would also follow the attacks of Pharaoh He and Si and Mu and rush into Yi Qing Luo's body. This plan was indeed well thought out, as expected of a rat that was good at playing despicable tricks in dark corners. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath, trying her best to maintain her consciousness so that the expression on her face could be controlled. At least in front of Pharaoh Crane, she could not show any difference. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. His eyelashes were wet with sweat. Yi Qing Luo clenched her teeth tightly as she raised her languid and calm eyes to look at Pharaoh He. She didn't hear what Pharaoh He said clearly. Moreover, she no longer had the energy to continue Pharaoh He's words. He just stood there quietly, watching Pharaoh Crane's actions, compared to retorting back. Chapter 34-33. Pharaoh He's face was extremely unsightly. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his eyes were sinister. He raised his hand, flipped his palm, and shouted angrily, "You don't know what's good for you!" As soon as he finished speaking, Pharaoh He's attack had already rushed forward, carrying a gloomy and evil aura, and after becoming a corpse puppet, his profound strength had skyrocketed. The two combined together. That horrifying energy fluctuation caused the evil aura in the hall to continuously gather. Old Man Tsang glanced back and took a look at Yi Qing Luo's current state. His face darkened. He said to Xian Gui, "Protect the girl. I will go meet him." Xian Gui looked at Old Man Tsang worriedly. After contracting with Yi Qing Luo, Xian Gui naturally knew that Old Man Tsang was just a tool spirit in Yi Qing Luo's hands. The strength of an artifact spirit could only be unleashed by relying on the artifact spirit that was attached to the artifact spirit. As for the artifact spirit itself, even if it left the divine artifact, it could only be considered a spirit body, just like Yi Qing Luo's current state. He couldn't cooperate with Old Man Tsang to release the power of the artifact spirit. "Don't worry about me." Old Man Tsang's figure swayed. The white robe, which seemed to be glowing with white light, turned into an afterimage and met Pharaoh He's attack head-on. Xian Gui was unable to dissuade her and could only quickly return to Yi Qing Luo's side, opened his own turtle shell and protected her behind him. Originally, Xian Gui was very worried about Old Man Tsang, but after seeing the scene before him, Xian Gui's tense heart finally calmed down. Old Man Tsang was extremely fast. It was so fast that Pharaoh Crane could not react in time. In just a few breaths of time, Pharaoh He was already firmly controlled by Old Man Tsang's attacks. Xian Gui was not the only one who was shocked. Even Pharaoh He looked at the white-haired, white-browed old man in disbelief. For an artifact spirit to be able to transform into a physical body and leave the divine artifact it was attached to was already very astonishing. Who would have thought that this artifact spirit would actually possess such formidable strength? Although Old Man Tsang's movements were still somewhat stiff and uncoordinated, it was as if he hadn't exercised for many years and wasn't used to it yet. However, all of his attacks and counterattacks were so precise that Pharaoh Crane could not parry them. Was this the legendary artifact, spirit of a divine artifact? Pharaoh He stared at Old Man Tsang with greed in his eyes. Even Xian Mu couldn't help but shift his gaze onto Yi Qing Luo's fingers. Evidently, they took Old Man Tsang to be the artifact spirit of the blue water divine artifact. Pharaoh He dodged Old Man Tsang's attack. Looking at Old Man Tsang's menacing momentum, the more he fought, the fiercer he became. Pharaoh He glanced at Xian Mu from the corner of his eyes. The two of them exchanged glances. Suddenly, Pharaoh He leaped up. His entire body's evil aura intersected with his Xian energy, emitting a whistling sound of a hurricane. Meanwhile, Xian Mu moved his feet. His figure speedily shifted towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Xian Mu's target was not only Yi Qing Luo's life, but also the azure aqua ring on her finger. Bang! There was a loud rumble. Xian Mu's Xian energy was blocked by Xian Gui's tortoise shell. On top of the tortoise shell, the snake-like creature opened its scarlet mouth, revealing its sharp fangs, and bit toward Xian Mu. At the moment when Xian Gui counterattacked, Xian Mu had quickly evaded. This movement made Old Man Tsang aware of Pharaoh He and Xian Mu's plan. He was just about to turn around and drive Xian Mu away. Chapter 34-34. Get out of my way, Old Man Song's expression was solemn as he moved his palm. The violent, profound energy turned into a chaotic hurricane as it exploded on Pharaoh He's body. The momentum was ferocious, like the firmament of the universe, causing one to sway. Pharaoh He's eyes widened in horror as he had yet to evade. The next moment he was completely engulfed by that hurricane. At the same time, in one of the palaces outside the palace, a man dressed in a black brocade robe who was meditating suddenly opened his eyes. His inky black pupils were suffused with a cold and treacherous glint. He looked precisely in the direction of the palace. As he squinted his sinister eyes, his entire expression suddenly became gloomy and ruthless. This power, it's him. After Old Man Song broke free from Pharaoh He's attack, he quickly rushed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, but he had barely moved a few steps. He saw Pharaoh He, who was engulfed by his palm, had once again appeared in front of him. Pharaoh He's robe was torn, his hair was disheveled, and he looked extremely disheveled. But his face was filled with a crazy grin. "You can't kill me. You can't kill me." Originally, he thought that he was dead meat, but under Old Man Song's powerful attack, he didn't feel any pain at all, and he was able to walk out of that palm strike unscathed. "I am a corpse puppet. I am an immortal corpse puppet." Pharaoh, he opened his arms wide and laughed crazily. Immortal. This made Pharaoh He's eyes more confident. He was no longer afraid of any attack from Old Man Song. He was completely unafraid of death as he once again pounced towards Old Man Song, being entangled by Pharaoh He who was unafraid of death. Old Man Song wanted to stop Si Yanmu's action, but was stopped. The new function unlocked by Pharaoh He made Si Yanmu's battle intent rise. Since he was immortal, what was there to be afraid of about this stinky turtle? The thought of Ah Xiang dying tragically on the battlefield. The butterfly saint technique also said that Ah Xiang was dismembered by Yi Qing Luo's gang of brothers, not even a complete corpse. The hatred in Si Yanmu's eyes gradually grew stronger. He stared deadly at Yi Qing Luo, who was leaning against the wall. Suddenly her lips curled upwards as she sneered, "Ha ha ha." I didn't expect the heroine Yi Qing Luo would also be like a dead dog lying on the ground. He pointed at Yi Qing Luo as he said, word by word, "Your body totally can't move right. No wonder, based on your character, you actually allowed Pharaoh He to insult you verbally and remained unmoved." Ha ha ha. No matter how Si Yanmu mocked and ridiculed him, the girl leaning against the wall still didn't make a sound. He only opened his calm eyes and looked indifferently in the direction where Pharaoh He and Old Man Song were fighting. Si Yanmu's heart was beating like a drum. He wasn't sure if Yi Qing Luo was so arrogant that she didn't put him in her eyes, or was she really too weak to move, too weak to reply to his mockery? His fists clenched, just as he was contemplating on how to break through the black tortoise's turtle shell protection to probe Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, while Pharaoh He and Old Man Song were fighting, a white light flickered in the hall. Si Yanmu's eyes were stung by the flash. He turned his head and blocked the direction of the white light, but his gaze fell on Yi Qing Luo's face. The young girl was still expressionless, facing the white light. There was no change in her eyes, like a stone statue without a soul. Soul? Chapter 34-35. Right. Soul. In Yi Qing Luo's calm eyes, there was not a trace of spirit and soul. In other words, Yi Qing Luo's so-called calmness and indifference were all pretended. Perhaps she herself was not even conscious, was she? This thought made Si Yanmu's heart surge with ecstasy. He stared at Yi Qing Luo, as if the girl in front of him was already a corpse lying there, and the azure dew ring on the girl's finger seemed to have fallen into his hand. Thinking of this, Si Yanmu at this moment, where was there any fear and dread? Anyway, he was already a corpse puppet. No matter what Xian Gui wanted to do to him, he would be fine, as long as he could kill Yi Qing Luo, not only to avenge Ah Xiang. He could also get all the divine weapons and sacred beasts from Yi Qing Luo. Greed made Si Yanmu's eyes burst out a wolf's light. He madly rushed towards Yi Qing Luo, ignoring Xian Gui's hard tortoiseshell. The snake-like dragon opened its scarlet mouth and bit his little thing. Si Yanmu's desperate attack method. Even Xian Gui couldn't bear it. After all, Xian Gui's soul had just reunited, and it had just adapted from the human body to the black tortoise's body. Under Si Yanmu's fierce attack, Xian Gui stood firm, his body in front of Yi Qing Luo slightly swayed. Suddenly, the snake dragon-like little thing wrapped around his back let out a blood-curdling scream. Si Yanmu didn't know when he broke free from the sharp fangs and grabbed the snake-like dragon's head. The little thing struggled, but its head was strangled and it lost the ability to attack. On the contrary, Si Yanmu, after the successful counterattack, vented all his anger on this little thing. At his fingertips, profound qi condensed. Snake, snake. Xian Gui felt the little thing's pain and anxiously called out its name. The huge tortoise shell opened, trying to cover the little thing in the shell. The unsolved mystery had been solved. The snake-like dragon wrapped around Xian Gui's back was a snake. Si Yanmu seemed to have noticed Xian Gui's action. He suddenly raised his head. His eyes were scarlet and ferocious, and his facial features were distorted. You want to save this beast? Let's see how you're going to save her. Following his words, his profound strength began to skyrocket. The little thing struggled even more painfully. The expression on Si Yanmu's face was filled with madness. Bite me! Bite! Little bastard, I'm going to cut you in two. Before he could finish his words, his voice suddenly stopped. Si Yanmu widened his eyes. His throat tightened. A cold hand was strangling his neck. His hand was bone-chilling. It was as if frost was covering his neck. The strength of the 5 fingers gripping his neck made him feel as if he had lost all his strength. Si Yanmu loosened his grip. Snake softly fell on Xian Gui's back. Snake, snake. Xian Gui was worried about the snake on his back, but after seeing the scene in front of him, he was even more worried. Master, you! Si Yanmu's throat tightened and both of his hands twisted his neck. But the more he tried to twist it, the strength of the neck was greater, almost choking him until he couldn't breathe. Si Yanmu's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at the figure in front of him. The young lady's expression was indifferent. Her eyes were still so calm, without any emotion. She just strangled his neck. Chapter 34-36. The strong wind danced wildly. The young lady's flame robe billowed, and even the air seemed to be dyed with a circle of blood red. She squinted her eyes. Her deep pupils exuded a chilling coldness, and a faint trace of blood light flashed. Want to kill me? Want to take away the vast water artifact? She opened her mouth, and there was a hint of coldness in her voice. There was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. Si Yanmu widened his eyes in fear and trembled all over. His neck was clasped so tightly that he could no longer spit out a word. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Her pink lips curled up into a smile, making her beautiful face look like a poppy in full bloom. Even if the corner of her mouth was raised, there was no expression on her face. It was hard to conceal her breathtaking beauty. Under that peerlessly beautiful smile, Si Yanmu only felt that smile was like a summon from hell. He couldn't help but tremble all over. The space was indescribable. Yi Qing Luo chuckled and lowered her eyes. Her gaze lightly swept over Xian Gui. Immediately, the other hand raised and clasped Si Yanmu's right hand, which was hanging weakly by his side. Ah! A scream came out from Si Yanmu's mouth, only to see a red light flashed past. Si Yanmu's right hand was cut into two. The bright red blended with the splattering blood. His hand fell to the ground and rolled a few times. Si Yanmu's body trembled like a sieve, staring at Yi Qing Luo with a face full of fear. No, impossible! How could you? How could you? He clearly saw that Yi Qing Luo's eyes were dull, as if she had lost her soul. Wasn't that the same as what the palace lord said? Yi Qing Luo's willpower collapsed. Yi Qing Luo would lose consciousness and soul. Let the secluded palace control it? But how could Yi Qing Luo counterattack? Could it be that she deliberately pretended to lose consciousness to lure him into the trap? The most important thing was he was now a corpse puppet. Undead corpse puppets were not afraid of pain, and they were immortal. But why could he feel the pain? Si Yanmu suppressed the speculation in his heart, widened his eyes, and looked at the right hand that was chopped off on the ground. No, no, I am a corpse puppet. I am immortal. However, no matter how Si Yanmu brainwashed himself, he wanted to use his will to make the severed hand return to his body. That hand just lay there quietly, without any intention of moving. You used this hand to injure Xiangui just now. Yi Qing Luo calmly opened her mouth. His words were cold and emotionless. Si Yanmu's body trembled as fear spread. Immediately after, the young lady's fingertips moved. The glowing flame fan, which was as red as a raging flame, shot out a red light. The red light landed on the half of the palm on the ground. Bang! With a loud explosion, the hand was directly blown to pieces. No, no, Si Yanmu screamed and struggled. However, the word no came out of his mouth. Not a single word came out from his throat. He did not need to breathe at all. But right now, the pain of suffocation was spreading in his chest. Just like in the next moment, he would die from lack of oxygen. And this hand... Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly again, as her cold voice fell. Si Yanmu's other wrist was directly chopped off. Once again it turned into ashes. No matter how Si Yanmu begged for mercy, Yi Qing Luo did not loosen her hand. Her expression did not change in the slightest. Chapter 34-37. He was like a toy, watching his limbs being cut off bit by the glower flame fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands. He had to bear the pain of his body being torn apart. Then, watching the parts that were cut off bit by bit turned into minced meat and splattered in the hull. And he could not die, nor could he faint. He could clearly feel the feeling of every part of his body. He could also clearly see how his body was cut off. This kind of torture was even more painful than letting him die directly. Si Yanmu could not understand. He was already the newest and most complete undead puppet. The other defective and semi-finished products could not feel the pain, impervious to fire and water. Even if they were knocked down to the ground, they could still continue to climb up. Even if their limbs were cut off, they could still use their own bones as weapons. Not to mention this new type of complete corpse puppet. He remembered when he was used as a test subject. After he was cut in half by the people from the secluded palace, the two parts of his body would be reassembled. Why not now? Why couldn't he reassemble now? Master, I am fine. Snake is also fine, don't be angry. Xiangui comforted Yi Qing Luo in a low voice. Si Yanmu ignored Yi Qing Luo's increasingly pale face because of fear, but Xiangui saw it clearly. Following Yi Qing Luo's counterattack, more cold sweat seeped out of Yi Qing Luo's forehead. Xiangui knew that the master was avenging Snake. He struggled to fight with his body. Its duty was to protect the master and not let the master suffer any harm, and not let the master suffer more serious injuries because of it. If Miss knew that it did not protect the master well, Miss would definitely not care about it. Hearing Xiangui's voice, Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. She took a deep breath to suppress the dull pain in her head and the feeling of being in a trance. She glanced at Si Yanmu, who had fallen on the ground, and slowly leaned on Xiangui's back. The little thing that was called a snake immediately wrapped around her arm and rubbed against it in a fawning manner. Yi Qing Luo closed her eyes. All the counterattacks just now had exhausted all her strength, especially when he was dealing with Si Yanmu. She could feel the dull pain in her head becoming more and more obvious, making it difficult for her to endure. This was the goal of the person behind the palace of gloomy darkness. If she really killed Si Yanmu, lingering around Si Yanmu's body, shrouding a ball of evil qi, they would all enter her body. She slowly raised her hand. The glowing flame fan at his fingertips flickered with a bright red light, imprinted in her eyes. Faintly, a wisp of black qi began to linger. She might not be able to hold on much longer. Ah, Xian in her mind. The man's peerlessly handsome face appeared. Master! Xian Gui realized that something was wrong with Yi Qing Luo's mood. He immediately shouted. At this moment, a terrifying energy fluctuation surged within the palace. The sound of something tearing through the air was extremely clear in this palace. In the next instant, Old Man Tsang and Pharaoh He, who were locked in battle, were suddenly blasted away by a strand of energy. Old Man Tsang seized the opportunity and speedily returned to Yi Qing Luo's side. One hand clasped Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Lass, wake up! Old Man Tsang transmitted his own energy into Yi Qing Luo's body. Chapter 34-38. It's really you. A gloomy and sinister voice echoed in the air. It was the voice of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. That person was back again. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect that after waiting for so many years. You're actually here. The gloomy voice let out a creepy laughter. What are you talking about? Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly as her breathing became heavy. Under the transmission of Old Man Tsang's energy, her state of mind calmed down. But her body was weak, and she probably didn't have the energy to fight anymore. The reappearance of the person behind the Palace of Darkness made Yi Qing Luo's emotions tensed up, especially the words of the person behind the scenes. She couldn't understand it. Green ghost. The gloomy voice was mixed with excitement as it spat out two words. Yi Qing Luo felt Old Man Tsang's body stiffen. Immediately, she heard the voice of the person behind the Palace of Darkness rang again. I didn't expect that. You've been hiding from me for thousands of years, and finally, I still found you. That frightening energy ripple that enveloped the palace was still continuously increasing. The legendary Azure Dew Bracelet Spirit. When she was still alive, you were so arrogant, condescending, and supercilious. But now, you're actually reduced to taking care of a girl from the lower realm. That person's mouth was full of ridicule, mixed with a joyful and carefree laughter. Yi Qing Luo looked sideways at Old Man Tsang and held his hand tightly. Old Man Tsang, that person was talking about you? Green Ghost. Was this Old Man Tsang's real name? The Azure Dew Bracelet Spirit. Who was the she that person was talking about? The previous owner of the Azure Dew Bracelet? This bracelet was rumored to be her Yi family's hidden family, an heirloom passed down from their ancestors. According to the ancestral records, this had the power to destroy the heaven and earth. Otherwise, those Yi family's elders wouldn't have tricked her into going to the Yi family's ancestral grave to dig out the Azure Dew Bracelet. They even risked their lives to snatch the Azure Dew Bracelet. So, the she in that person's mouth was most likely referring to the ancestor of the Yi clan? Her ancestor had once made the Azure Dew Bracelet so glorious to be able to make Old Man Tsang look down on everyone and everything. Old Man Tsang reached out and held her small hand. A low voice entered her ears. Lass, this old man has let you down. His tone was filled with self-blame and helplessness. Even if Old Man Tsang didn't say it clearly, Yi Qing Luo also understood what Old Man Tsang's apology was for. Old Man Tsang was blaming himself. Because of him, once again, that person was lured over. It was also because of him. The fact that Yi Qing Luo possessed the Azure Dew Bracelet was also exposed. That person was very ambitious. It was so big that it wanted to dominate everything in the world. If that person knew of the existence of the Azure Dew Bracelet, they would definitely think of ways to snatch it, with her current strength, not to mention guarding the Azure Dew Bracelet. Whether or not he could survive that person's attack was a problem. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. You took action to protect me. She revealed a faint smile towards Old Man Song. Then he turned his head and looked forward. Because of the appearance of the person behind the Palace of Darkness, Pharaoh, he stood by the side, not daring to move at all. A pair of malicious eyes stared fiercely at Old Man Song, who was standing beside Yi Qing Luo. Obviously, he understood Old Man Song's identity. Not the artifact spirit of some Azure Dew artifact, but the artifact spirit of the legendary Azure Dew Bracelet, which made one's heart fill with greed. Only, no matter how many thoughts he had in his heart. But in front of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. Chapter 3439. In the darkness, Yi Qing Luo's delicate body suddenly stiffened. Her whole body suddenly felt like it was immersed in an ice house. The coldness eroded her. Her pupils shrank, and the hand holding Old Man Song suddenly tightened. Someone was watching her. It was the person behind the scenes from the Dark Palace. She couldn't sense where that person was in the hall, but she could clearly feel the gaze coming from that person. Yi Qing Luo felt as though that person had seen through her clothes and seen through her very soul. It made her feel uncomfortable all over. The Azure Dew Bracelet is in your hand. A cold voice reverberated in the hall. Yi Qing Luo slightly pursed her lips to keep her consciousness awake. You can run to the lower realm without any scruples. Why can't the Azure Dew Bracelet be in my hand? Her voice paused slightly, her lips curled and revealed a sarcastic smile. I suddenly understand. You are a dignified person with a high status in the upper realm. Why would you go through so much trouble to invade the lower realm? Oh! That person's tone rose and sneered. Although I know you are stalling for time, but I really want to hear what you understand. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath and adjusted her sitting posture with Old Man Song's strength. Immediately, her lips curled up. Your purpose from the beginning to the end is for the Azure Dew Bracelet. You know that the Azure Dew Bracelet is in the Nirvana realm. You want to get it, right? There was a moment of silence in the hall. The silent atmosphere permeated the hall. Si Yanmu, who was lying on the ground, could not bear such an atmosphere. He cried out in fear, Palace Lord, Palace Lord. Yi Qing Luo is sinister and cunning. Don't waste time with her. Her consciousness is no longer clear. As long as Palace Lord personally takes action, you will definitely be able to control. Ah. Si Yanmu's words had not finished. Suddenly, a sinister force, like a sharp blade, shot straight. It fiercely pierced into Si Yanmu's mouth. All of Si Yanmu's words turned into that miserable scream. Then he could no longer make any sound. What I want to do, it is not up to you to instruct me. That cold voice sounded. Si Yanmu's entire body was immediately shrouded by a black qi and swallowed. After the black qi dispersed. On the ground, only Si Yanmu's clothes were left. Yi Qing Luo witnessed all these, and the expression on her face changed slightly. Just a puppet, and you can even eat it. Your taste is quite heavy. Yi Qing Luo in the lower realm, there's still such an amazing existence like you. It makes this seat to develop a strong interest towards you. That person's gaze became even more scorching. Yi Qing Luo had nowhere to hide. He could only endure the feeling of being stared at. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in you. Ha ha ha. That person laughed. His laughter was still so eerie and terrifying, causing people who heard it to feel their scalps go numb. That laughter lasted for a long time. Yi Qing Luo didn't open her mouth to interrupt that person's laughter. When the man stopped laughing, she slowly curled her lips and said, In other words, I guessed right. Yes, you're right. I know that Azure Ghost is in the lower realms, but... The man paused. My purpose in coming to the lower realms isn't just for the azure dew bracelet. After that, the man said, even if you're right, so what? Don't tell me you can still stop this seat? I can't stop you. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flickered slightly. The hand on her finger moved slightly. Chapter 3440. What did you say? That man's tone paused for a moment. Suddenly, he seemed to have felt something. That man cursed silently. Damn it! A bunch of trash! Just as he finished his words, the suffocating spiritual pressure that had enveloped the entire hall disappeared in an instant. This aura disappeared extremely quickly, so fast that Old Man Song and Xian Gui had no time to react. Not only that, even the black, sinister aura that lingered in the surroundings was gradually dissipating. Bam! The ground suddenly trembled violently. The indestructible palace with no exit under this tremor collapsed with a loud crash. Gravel flew and dust curled up. A tall figure stood outside the collapsed stone wall. Purple robe fluttered along with the strong wind. When a gap appeared in the palace, that figure quickly rushed into the palace. When she saw that figure rushing over, Yi Qing Luo's tensed heart finally relaxed. The hand that was covering her fingertips also slowly slid down. The next moment, she felt herself falling into a warm embrace. That embrace, warm and generous, the elegant scent of sandalwood calmed her anxious and uneasy heart. Ah, Xian! Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, opened her eyes, looking at the face in front of her. Ah, Xian really came. He really rushed over. This man, every time, was like a god descending from the sky, appearing in front of her, protecting her, guarding her. Lil Luo, I'm here. Purple robe fluttered. He tightly embraced the young lady in his arms, looking at the young lady's pale face and the cold sweat that seeped out. His eyes were filled with pity. You caught that person? He is the real mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness, and he already knows. The azure dew bracelet, the existence of Old Man Song. Yi Qing Luo's little hand grasped DMO Xian's lapel, trying hard to stay awake as she asked. DMO Xian grasped her little hand and bent down to kiss her pale lips. No, when I came over, that person had already run away. That Old Man Song. Old Man Song. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly widened as she turned her head to look at Old Man Song beside her, incomparably worried. DMO Xian turned her head around, and his large palm wiped the cold sweat on her forehead. I'm here, it'll be fine. I'm fine. Old Man Song sighed with a heavy heart. The azure dew bracelet will only belong to you. Even if that person wants to forcefully take it, the azure dew bracelet will not belong to that person. You don't need to worry. He paused and looked at DMO Xian. Take good care of her. I'll go back to replenish my energy first. Saying that, he didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo's response. He turned into a wisp of green smoke and entered the azure dew bracelet. How could Yi Qing Luo not see the worry on Old Man Song's face, and that expression which was filled with thoughts? Just as he was about to open his mouth to say something, her pink lips were pressed by DMO Xian's index finger. What you need to do now is to have a good rest and expel the evil yin qi from your body. Don't think about anything else. DMO Xian's gentle voice seemed to be able to pinch water out. That pair of glistening peach blossom eyes gazed deeply at Yi Qing Luo, bearing the weight of thousands of peach blossom spring water. Yi Qing Luo was once again mesmerized by the handsome man. Don't. This sweet and beautiful moment. However, he was interrupted by the sound of stumbling footsteps. Yi Qing Luo nestled in DMO Xian's arms as she turned her head. Chapter 3441. Because he was too afraid and terrified, Pharaoh Crane's footsteps were staggering, and occasionally tripped by the gravel beneath his feet. Apparently, he had been badly frightened. Yi Qing Luo's gaze turned towards Pharaoh Crane. Dmo Xian's line of sight also turned over. After that, he stretched out his hand. A shapeless force grabbed Pharaoh Crane's neck and pulled him back. That shapeless force threw Pharaoh Crane to the corner of the palace. Pharaoh Crane's internal organs felt like they had been ruptured as his face twitched in pain. Spare me. Overlord, I beg you to spare me. Pharaoh Crane begged for mercy without any hesitation. In front of absolute power, all his dignity did not exist. He only wanted to live. Earlier, when I rushed over, there were quite a number of people from the dark forces among those who obstructed me. Dmo Xian's expression was cold and indifferent. Pharaoh Crane trembled in fear. That is that person's palace lord's arrangement. I don't know anything. I don't know. Dmo Xian's brows rose slightly as he suddenly clenched his fingers. A burst of purple, profound light enveloped Pharaoh Crane. That profound light was like a ball of burning flame, burning Pharaoh Crane. Pharaoh Crane let out a miserable shriek. Facing Pharaoh Crane's miserable cries, Dmo Xian was not moved at all. You hurt my little Luo, or you deserve to die. That purple flame continued to burn Pharaoh Crane. Slowly he turned into ashes. Dmo Xian adjusted the person in his arms to a comfortable position and immediately strode towards the exit. Yi Qing Luo's little hand grabbed his robe. Xian, I want to see that mural again. She pointed towards the direction of the mural. Dmo Xian carried her and walked towards the mural. When he saw the carving of a human figure on the mural, he was stunned. Dmo Xian's eyes flickered slightly. Xian. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian. Do you think this person could possibly be my Yi family's ancestor? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and met the young lady's gaze. Why do you say so? Old Man Song said that she is the empress of divine emperors. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly as her vision returned to the mural. Those surrounding her are vast water god armaments, and to find the vast water divine weapon and open the enchantment of the vast water divine weapon. Only my divine phoenix profound heart jade can do it. I feel that between me and her there is definitely a connection. He had heard the people behind Abyss Palace mention it before, the previous owner of the Azure Dew Bracelet. To be able to make Old Man Song look down on everything and everyone, this meant that the previous master of the Azure Dew Bracelet had a status and strength that was above all living things. He then thought about Old Man Song's reaction when he saw the mural. Basically, one could deduce that there was a high possibility that the Divine Emperor's surname was Yi, and he was her ancestor. Dmo Xian didn't say a word and just rubbed her little head. Together with her, they looked at the human-shaped totem carved on the mural. After an unknown period of time, Yi Qing Luo retracted her vision and closed her eyes. Immediately, she stretched out her hands and hooked them around Dmo Xian's neck. Forget it. Don't think too much about it. When we reach the upper realm and find out about my background, everything will naturally become clear. As soon as he finished speaking, her expression suddenly changed. When she stretched out her hand to hook Dmo Xian's neck, her arm seemed to have brushed against something sticky. Between her nostrils, she could smell a very faint smell of blood. Chapter 3442. Yi Qing Luo's actions weren't considered gentle, but she managed to avoid touching the skin on Dmo Xian's chest. After the front was pulled open, his pectoral muscles were revealed. But at this moment, on his chest, there was a large pool of blood that was shocking to the eye. That was obviously the coagulated blood from the wound, and deliberately used a perfume bag to cover up the smell of blood. Xian, what's going on? Blood dyed Yi Qing Luo's eyes red. She stared at the large wound in a daze. The dull pain in her head, which had finally subsided, once again invaded her brain. Nothing. Dmo Xian closed his lapel again, and hugged her to leave. Don't touch the wound. Yi Qing Luo didn't even dare to get close to his chest. Thinking of earlier, she nestled in Mo Xian's arms. She unconsciously touched his wound. Her heart felt uncomfortable, as if it was pricked by a needle. Be good, let's go back first. Mo Xian slightly withdrew his strength and pulled her body closer to him. I won't hurt. How can it not hurt? I can walk on my own, Xian. Put me down, don't touch your wound. Yi Qing Luo struggled, trying to get down. Mo Xian's lips curled slightly. I don't feel pain now. If you move again, it will hurt. Yi Qing Luo was so frightened that she didn't dare to move. Mo Xian carried her and slowly walked out of the hall. Everything around was covered in white fog, making the surrounding buildings look extremely illusory. Every place here, every palace, was filled with nobility and luxury. But Yi Qing Luo didn't have the mood to look at the surrounding environment. Her gaze was always fixed on Mo Xian's face. Looking at the man's peerless elegance, his calm expression, her heart was in dull pain. How could anyone hurt Xian? Her thoughts kept wandering. Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo smelled a strong smell of blood. She was stunned and suddenly regained her senses. She saw she was carried by Mo Xian, and she didn't know when they had walked to a long flight of stairs. Looking at the stairs, she couldn't see the end. And around the stairs and above the stairs, corpses that were dripping with blood were lying on the ground. Blood stained the ground. In the air, the smell of blood was very strong. It's still fresh. Obviously, these people had just died not long ago. Yi Qing Luo recalled the mastermind of secluded Darkness Palace. Before Mo Xian arrived, he said something. Damn it, that bunch of trash. Trash! Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled. His gaze swept across the two sides, as well as the small mountain of corpses in front of him. There were at least tens of thousands of people. Moreover, judging from the residual energy in the surroundings, it could be seen that there was still some residual energy in the surroundings. None of these 10,000 people were weak. This was not the Nirvana realm. The strength of the person beside the mastermind was definitely not something that the small fries in the Nirvana realm could compare to. Otherwise, Xian wouldn't have been injured. Her throat suddenly tightened. Xian, these people must be the mastermind behind the Nether Palace, specially arranged here to stop Mo Xian. That was why that person knew that she was dragging the time, waiting for Mo Xian to rush over, and because of his curiosity, he allowed her to speak out her own guess. That was because that person had timed everything perfectly, but that person had forgotten about it. Mo Xian rushed to Yi Qing Luo's side. It was because of her that was why Xian was injured. Chapter 3443. Then your injury. Yi Qing Luo bit her lower lip lightly as she looked at the chest that was just inches away from her. She didn't even dare to move. She was afraid of touching Mo Xian's wound. Mo Xian only smiled. It's all right, it's already over. The most important thing is that you're fine. Yi Qing Luo was touched and her heart ached at the same time. After walking out of the Abyss Palace, Xian Gui returned to Yi Qing Luo's pet space. Mo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo in his arms as he sat on the back of the nine-tailed fox and rushed towards the East Continent's battlefield. Xian! Yi Qing Luo raised her head and met with the man's deep pupils. Do you feel that the minute you rushed over to that palace, the mastermind of secluded Darkness Palace fled the scene, was because they were afraid of your ability or worried that you would recognize them? Both. Mo Xian answered as he held her wrist and checked her pulse. You have come to the palace of gloomy darkness. Can the Eastwater continent hold on? That person, would he have rushed towards East Continent after escaping? Yi Qing Luo's eyes drooped down as her face was filled with worry. I won't. As Mo Xian said that, he took out a medicinal pill from the profound dragon ring and fed it into Yi Qing Luo's mouth. East Tide Continent has the world group, and there's also Ghost Marshal and God Thief, etc. And if I didn't guess wrongly, Guayu, Ghost Doctor, etc. should have already rushed over to the battlefield. Hearing their names, Yi Qing Luo heaved a sigh of relief. If they are around. Just as the words were about to leave her mouth, she suddenly stopped. In his mind, the conversation between the Ghost King and Holy Pirate appeared. She was startled. Master Ghost Doctor, Teacher Guayu, and the others, as well as Ghost Warrior and Saint Thief, actually know each other, right? Yes. Mo Xian nodded. And Ghost King. Yi Qing Luo recalled the time when she crossed hands with Ghost King. Ghost King's shocking ability. They are not from Nirvana realm. Mo Xian nodded again. In fact, from a long time ago. Yi Qing Luo already had this guess in her heart. Whether it was Guayu or Ghost Doctor, it didn't matter if it was Holy Pirate or Ghost Warrior. There was also Zhou Mo, who was always together with Guayu. None of them were simple characters. But Yi Qing Luo had never asked about it, because in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, they were all her mentors and helpful friends, her companions. They didn't want to talk about it. She would not interrogate him. Now from Mo Xian's mouth, she had gotten a definite answer. Yi Qing Luo didn't continue asking any further. They were here. They would definitely be able to defend the East Water Continent in this battle. All right, take a rest first. Let the pill disperse the evil yin qi in your body so that you won't be affected by it. I'll wake you up when we reach the East Continent. Following Mo Xian's gentle and magnetic voice, and his large palm that was gently caressing her back. Or perhaps it was because of the pill he had just swallowed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were heavy as she shut her eyes. She tried to blink again. In the end, he fell into a deep sleep. After an unknown period of time. By the time Yi Qing Luo opened her eyes again, it was quiet all around. The room was completely dark. It should be midnight. She wanted to get up, but she felt that her body was wet. It was like being soaked in water. It was sticky, which made her frown. Suddenly, a cold and deep voice of a young man rang in her ears. "Madam, you're awake." This voice. Yi Qing Luo's muddled thoughts gathered. Wind. Chapter 3444. 2 days and 2 nights? This figure made Yi Qing Luo slightly stunned. It's been 2 days and 2 nights? Xian guarded me for 2 days and 2 nights? Yi Qing Luo propped herself up. When he stood up, he could even make the sound of splashing water. Yes, Wind replied. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and pressed hard between her brows. After sleeping for a long time, his muddled mind gradually regained a trace of clarity. The memories from before he fell asleep emerged in his mind. She suddenly raised her eyes, her face full of worry. He guarded me for 2 days and 2 nights. Then his injuries. Have they been treated? No. Ah Feng's voice trembled a little. Since the Overlord carried you back to the room, he has not left your side at all. That fool, Yi Qing Luo, was touched, and her heart ached at the same time. An indescribable feeling spread from the bottom of his heart. Mistress, I have a request. Ah Feng suddenly knelt down. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and spoke in a hoarse voice. Speak. She knew that Wind's request was definitely related to Mo Xian. As expected, Ah Feng said seriously, I hope Mistress can persuade the Overlord to have a good rest. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly harder. She lowered her eyelashes and clenched her slender fingers. He could still feel the wetness in his palms. She said, I will. In the darkness, there was silence again. After a long while, Yi Qing Luo seemed to have thought of something as her hoarse voice sounded a little ethereal in the quiet room. Have you always been by Xian's side? Yes, Wind replied. Then you should know. Xian's injuries, how? Came about? Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes, searching for Wind's figure in the darkness. Mo Xian said that it wasn't the people behind the secluded palace who had specially arranged for those people to obstruct him. In that case, It was definitely not those people who injured him. Based on Dmo Xian's strength, someone who could leave a wound on his chest simply didn't exist, and Dmo Xian did not want her to know the reason for his injury. Very likely it was because of her. Ah Feng was silent and did not answer. This meant that Wind indeed knew the reason for Dmo Xian's injury. There was also indirect proof. Dmo Xian's injury was related to her. At the thought of this possibility, Yi Qing Luo's heart felt a tugging pain. Ah Feng, Ah Xian was injured to save me. I have the right to know. Her voice was a little hoarse. Ah Feng was silent again. He seemed to be considering whether he should say it or not. In the end, he still gritted his teeth and said, "The geography of the Palace of Darkness is complicated. The map provided by the 3,000 peach blossoms did not clearly depict the interior of the Palace of Darkness. As soon as the Dizun arrived at the Palace of Darkness, he was trapped at the entrance by the people of the Palace of Darkness. His Majesty spent a lot of effort to defeat the people from the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and searched for you everywhere, but he still found nothing." Hearing this, Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes and caressed the profound phoenix ring on her fingertip. Inside the Palace of Darkness, the Netherworld Dragon Ring and the Netherworld Phoenix Ring had never sensed each other, until Dmo Xian rushed to the outer perimeter of the palace. Yi Qing Luo then felt the subtle connection between the profound Phoenix Ring and the profound Dragon Ring. Moreover, when Dmo Xian had just arrived at the Palace of Seclusion, he was besieged by the human wave tactic. This also meant that the mastermind of the Nether Palace had long known that Dmo Xian was on his way here.